Good morning. We'll now call this work session for October 25th, 2022 to order, and we will start by reading our Who Are We statement. We are the Polk County Leadership Governance Team. If we were to pick one phrase to define us, it would be student-centered, because when we come together to work, we lean on our diverse backgrounds and experiences to ensure that our decisions are focused on providing a high-quality education for all students. The four most important things to our governance team are operating with integrity, respecting our students, staff, families, and each other, establishing a culture where our stakeholders feel valued, supported, and have opportunities for personal and professional growth, supporting an approach of continuous improvement to ensure student outcomes. Collectively, we need to work on behalf of the children we serve and find avenues of agreement so that we can govern the district in an effective manner. There is no acceptable alternative. We will always collaborate in a respectful manner in order to enhance opportunities for each student and staff member. We will not disparage others. Our students will thrive because we will remain committed to supporting the whole child. We hope to engage and empower our students and stakeholders to create a community of lifelong learners. And with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Hyde.
Ma'am, good morning or good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, staff, and community members. Thank you for being here today. We're going to begin, as we have each of our workshops, by bringing up two of our community-based partners, again, in an effort for us to highlight all of the incredible opportunities our students and families have here in Polk County Public Schools. At the culmination of all these presentations, they will find a resource page on our website that allows them to shop based off interest and their child's needs, because that's one of the amazing things we do have is we have a variety of partnerships that fit the needs of our students and their families based off their personal beliefs and values and or, again, the needs of our students. So we're very pleased to have such a robust partnership opportunity here in Polk County Public Schools. Our first organization today is called Campfire Sunshine, and I'm going to invite Rhonda Moyer, Director of Operations, and Anna Borrero, Customer and Community Relations Associate, to please come forward and join us for today's presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rhonda Moyer, and this is Anna. And thank you so much for having us this morning. And I just want to give you a brief insight to a little bit about Campfire in case you don't know. Campfire itself, as a national agency, started in 1910 for a program for older teenage girls. They had brothers that were involved in the Boy Scouts and they were jealous, so basically we are a little bit older. Oh, I'm sorry. We're a little bit older than Girl Scouts. It is typically started out as a scouting type agency, but Campfire believes very much in meeting the needs of our communities no matter where we are. No two Campfire councils are exactly the same. So in 1975, as families structured themselves differently, we became Campfire Boys and Girls and let the guys in. And then in the year 2000, we decided that we needed a greater initiative and involvement. Just simply as Campfire. Our vision has always been a world where all young people have a chance to thrive and have equitable opportunities. Our programs themselves are divided into four key areas. Self-discovery, where they can find their spark and figure out who they are now so that they can figure out what they would like to become in the future. We always have had engagement with nature through our outdoor programs, our camping, and different environmental education programs that we have done throughout the years. And our community connection, our teenagers and our younger youth are continually looking for projects where we can serve our community. Basically, any other nonprofit can request our assistance for some sweat equity, and we can come and help them with a project. And then our newest is the aligning everything for academic enrichment. So now what we have, basically, go ahead. So our self-discovery program, we have a variety of programs for kids of all ages, starting from the ages of 4 all way up through high school. We have an after-school program we call the STEAM team. We have about 75 students. We pick up from 7 different schools and bring them to our facility. And they have some science enrichment activities, homework help. We really try to meet the needs of the family with that. We have our short-term education programs, which I'm going to go into further, and we have family events. We just had our Creepy Crawly Fall Festival this past Saturday, where we had about 500 family members, and this was open to the entire community, and they came and they had the old-fashioned fall festival. And then we have our teen program as well. Those have 2 courses that we present into the school system, which I will talk about, and our teen service program as well. I talked about our engagement with nature because, of course, going out into nature, today our society has less and less time to spend quality time with family exploring nature like some of us used to do when we were kids. And we want to provide as many opportunities for them to get out and really engage with nature, because you certainly can use nature as a classroom if you take the time to do it. Now I'll talk about our academic enrichment program. We talked about our STEAM program. Currently, we are providing a science-based course in the Crystal Lake Community Family School. We call it Science Rocks. And this program is a 6-week course we take to 2nd graders. It's very hands-on, science-based. It also has reading and math components to it. So they're really learning something new that they're not aware that they're actually learning while they're having fun, because we know that experiential learning is the best kind, where they really get their hands into something, do a project, and feel accomplished when they're done. That particular program, we were lucky enough to receive a grant, and we do pre and post tests so that we can assure that our students are learning something while they're there. For our older youth, we have our program called In Defense of Food. This program is currently being done for Blake Academy. This program is also a 6-week program, and it teaches students all about nutrition, how the marketing today of our food processing companies are gearing not so good food to make it appeal to the youth, and how you need to tell the difference between food or FUD. That's what we call it. FUD is what we call fake food, and that's the processed high sugar things that they really should get away from. So when we go into the school, we provide an option of FUD and an option of food. And we do try to teach them to make the proper choices when we're there. We also talk about how to read the back of a food label, how to make very healthy snacks, and those types of things. And then we also offer a program we call Money Smarts. And Money Smarts is exactly what it is. We go in for 6 weeks and we teach students how to set up a checkbook, how to manage money, how to relate to finances in the everyday world that we're experiencing today. We provide them with tools. Some of them may have never seen a checkbook. Parents, of course, we are such a world of we're going to swipe that card that they may have never seen one. So we try to show them how to do the checks and balances of keeping up with their finances and being good stewards of money. And we also talk about what it's going to be and what you're going to need to do when you become an adult, and how to be a responsible financial adult. Let's see. So those are the 3 programs that we primarily are taking into the school system right now. Now, I mentioned that Campfire has our teen program that we have. Last year in general, our teenagers gave over 6,000 hours of community service back to the community. And again, this year we'll be doing that. That program lasts all year long. That is called our Teen Challenge yearly service program. And then during the summer, we have 2 week-long trips where we go around the state of Florida and we actually give service whatever position or whatever city we stop in. So not only are we giving back to our immediate community, but we're also teaching our kids to reach out and come up with ideas of how they can help the entire state. Entire state. We work together to provide impactful community service opportunities and leadership programs that will help teens gain valuable experience. One of the things we find is when our students are on any of our projects or in any of our courses, their minds open up to possible career choices that they might want to do in the future. And it's really fun when you see that light turn on and maybe we're at an aquarium doing a project and they're like, oh, I think maybe I would like to become one of the people that work with the animals or something like that. And that's just one example of some of the things that we do. The thing that we would like to ask of you is how can we, Campfire, help the Polk County school system and branch out farther between our partnership? So if any time you can think of anything, just contact our office. We'd be more than willing to sit down and talk with you further about things that we can do.
We're trying to figure out our new tab from here.
Correct.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These are some great programs I learned about today. If an administrator is hearing this today, do they request these programs from you, like to go into a different school? How does the partnership work? How do we connect you to more schools?
So basically, the program is totally free. It is a 6-week commitment. Science Rocks is geared currently for 2nd grade, but if they have another grade that has a time frame open, because that's what we find is the most difficult thing. Because of testing and school structure, finding a time where we can come in is a little bit difficult. We can gear the program for any age. So all they would need to do is contact me. My name is Rhonda Moyer at Campfire, and I can set them up and we can talk with them about how we can structure the program. And then for the teens, same thing, you would call Campfire, and we have a teen program coordinator. Her name is Spencer, and she would set up those courses.
Is the financial literacy also 6 weeks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Fields?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation today. I would defer to the superintendent or his staff as to what the process is and how we can ensure that it's at least considered by the appropriate staff.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate that, because my recommendation would be that any request, either from a partnership group or community-based group or from our school administration, should funnel through Ms. Crowley's office. Jeanette oversees all of our partnerships, and it is essential that we maintain one point of communication for all of those things, and that's really primarily not to serve as a gatekeeper, but to ensure that there's accountability, that when someone has reached out, that she's ensuring, subsequent to that conversation, that a connection is being made. As I shared previously, we're getting to a point now where many of these groups are going to be invited to principal meetings as well. So for a lot of our schools who do not currently have exposure to the variety of programs that we have and partnerships we have, they will in the very near future. So there'll be kind of a round robin where they'll rotate throughout the room. So they'll get a mini presentation from each group in case there's an interest that they have in partnering with another entity to support their students. I see no other speakers. Any other questions? Thank you, ladies. Fantastic job. Just, there's a lot of buttons to get back to my computer screen. I apologize. At this time, I'd like to bring up the next group, partnership group, and it's Parker Street Ministries. I'd like to invite, at this time, Christina Allen to please come forward. And Ms. Allen, I apologize, I didn't have a second name in the contact information, so if you want to introduce who's with you.
Yes, I'm Christina Allen, Education Director for Parker Street Ministries, and this is Sarah Breed. What is your official title?
Development and Communications Director.
There you go.
Pleasure.
And she's here with me, and especially if my voice decides to go out. So thank you so much for having us today. I am very excited to share with you a little bit about what's going on at Parker Street Ministries. We are a neighborhood-based ministry that's committed to gospel-centered community development, beginning in the Parker Street neighborhood, but also we are beginning to look at the Lake Wire neighborhood and offering some of our services there as well. We have 4 main goal areas. I'm going to touch on the other 3 and then talk about our lifetime learning the most. But our healthy community is one of our goal areas that we have opportunities to get together with our families. Our next thing coming up is our fall festival and then our Christmas store. These are opportunities for us to get to know the neighborhood and connect with new families. I'm excited for our fall festival coming up, and we actually have some of our school teachers from some of our students coming to volunteer with us this year, which is always super encouraging. The kids love seeing their teachers outside of school, so that's a neat thing. Part of that is, as well, is also just a focus on health in general, being good neighbors and good stewards, but also being healthy all around, so exercise and healthy eating, and a lot of that's incorporated into our after-school program. Another goal area we have is our financial capability. That is lots of all of that good money smart stuff that Campfire also shared about. Those are some of our similar goals that we work on as well. We do that through family dinners where we have our families out from our after school program, and our students are learning those skills while their parents are also learning a similar skill, and we come together and do some goal setting together. And also all of that is built into our year-round after-school and summer program. And we also have Desirable Neighborhood. We love our neighborhood. We love the Parker Street neighborhood. We are thankful for Polk County and for Lakeland and their care for it as well. And as there's lots and lots of efforts there, we love working alongside of our neighbors to help it to be a desirable place to live. And it's been very neat in the 17 plus years that I've been around to see the growth in that area and the families that have stayed in the area to contribute to that as well. And our desire in that is to connect families to resources and also some new housing efforts. Obviously, I want to use most of our time to talk about our lifetime learning goal, and that is our year-round education program. So we do have a daily K through 12 program. We offer and the after-school program following the Polk County school calendar, and then also 8 weeks in the summer of a 6-hour-a-day program. The after-school program looks like school pickup for a few of our schools, but also we've been very fortunate to work with transportation, and because all of our students live in the Parker Street neighborhood, the county has worked with us and added a bus stop to many of our an additional bus stop so that many of our students come directly to us, which just really helps with safety. In the early days, I was taking our van and chasing the buses around and picking students up, and they've been really accommodating, so that's just really great for our zone schools that we do that. But as the students come to us, they have playground time, kind of slough the school day off a little bit, a healthy snack, and then as they come inside of our facility, we have homework help, some of that focus on digital literacy, where we're working on typing skills for a lot of the testing and things that's moving more that direction. We have one-on-one tutoring and individual plans for each student. And then on Fridays, we have more of an an extracurricular focus. So that's where we have our financial stuff, healthy eating, and our STEAM programs, our art program, where the students all have those opportunities as well. And then we take all of that program and we stretch it out. We get to take a break from homework help, but we continue with our academics in the summer. And we have about a 2-hour academic block during our 6-hour day where we are focusing on reading, comprehension and fluency, and also on math facts. We feed the kids a lot throughout the day. They eat, I feel like, all day long. And then have more extracurricular time and then some field trips as well during that time. All while that's going on, we also have about 100 students from our neighborhood. 80 to 100 students work. A little over 100 is our capacity for that group. We also have a young adult program where we are serving high school students from our area. They are provided the same opportunities of homework help, have a computer lab for, if they need to work on a project, if they need tutoring. We have about 10 to 20 students from our area right now that we're serving. We do pick them up from school and provide that for them. Many of them volunteer to get some of those service hours they need for high school with the younger students, alongside of a lot of high school students from all local high schools. And other people from the community, which is just really encouraging for us as well. And then during the summer, our young adults also have a workforce program. So our rising 9th and 10th graders get to participate in what we call a workforce program, and they are coming to us each day for those 8 weeks. 1 day a week, they are receiving instruction in soft job skills, working their way through curriculum that's teaching all of those important, when to call in and how to manage your money and all that financial stuff. And then 3 days a week, they go out into the community and they serve at different nonprofits and get to put those skills to practice. So they'll do volunteer work out in the community. And then Fridays are college tours and different tours of different businesses and things like that. All the while that they're doing that, they are actually earning a stipend from us that's teaching them how to manage that money. Prior to that, they had to establish a savings account. So we're helping them track that, make sure that they're saving a portion of that money. And then they're also earning a match for that. So for an incentive to graduate high school on time. So when they graduate, they get to come back to us with their diploma and show that off, and we get to celebrate with that with them. And then they have a portion of that money that was held on to them for that time to use going forward. So let's see. I did want to share a part of my role as education director, and a privilege of my role is getting to connect with guidance counselors and educators at the schools that our students attend. And I have just been very just honored and encouraged by that, of just the communication and the partnership and the teamwork. What I've seen with that is helping build a bridge between parents who may be nervous for those things. We've had educators that will come to our facility to have conferences to help parents with that don't have transportation and things like that. And that helps us create an individual plan of what we're going to focus on after school, considering the students' IEP goals or their grades or whatever they're struggling with between the parents and the teachers and the guidance counselors. We make an individual plan for each child to focus on during that tutoring time. And so I've definitely been very grateful for that. I think. Yeah. One more thing. Oh, and I did also want to share, let's see. During our summer program as well, we've been able to provide all of our students with 2 tops and 2 bottoms for their uniforms and backpacks filled with the specific supplies from the schools, and then be able to work with our schools to share any overflow and all of that. So that is, I think that is all of our lifetime learning stuff. Have any questions for me?
Ms. Fields.
Thank you. I don't really have any questions, but I wanted to commend you all for your work in the community. You guys have been doing it for a minute now, and you're making a tremendous impact. And being in the neighborhood where the students are and being able to touch them directly, to me, is just awesome. I guess I do have a question. Is there any fees associated with your program, or are the kids allowed to come without having to pay fees? And if they do have to pay fees, is there a reduced fee for the ones whose parents can't afford to pay?
Thank you so much for that question. Yes, we are free during the school year. We do ask that parents participate with us at least one time per semester, whether that's coming to a family dinner, volunteering, something like that. The summer program for years now has just been $10 a week per child, but many of our moms actually come and serve lunch or volunteer or chaperone field trips to make that payment as well. So,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Ms. Miller.
Thank you. I learned a lot today, so thanks for coming out. My question is, serving that community, you have the relationships with those schools already. So parents are finding out about your program through the school? Are they reaching out to you, like self-referral, or is it referred through the schools?
So a little bit of both. We are specifically just for that neighborhood, so word of mouth travels pretty quickly. It's probably about 600 to 700 addresses, but in a pretty condensed spot. So parents see our vans picking up or our staff walking kids home at the end of the day, and that kind of is a big part of that. But also those zone schools, especially our elementary schools, they know which addresses we serve, and so as students come in, the guidance counselors will give me a call and say, hey, do you have a room for a second grader or fifth grader or something like that? And so there's a little bit of both on that way.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Seeing no further questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next 4 items before the board have to deal with the attendance boundary committee. And so I will be fast forwarding to those. Here we go. So it's important to start with a reminder about the attendance boundary committee, which we've had in place for some time. It's a well-balanced committee. The attendance boundary committee meets regularly throughout the year, and they seek to address issues when we are having new school construction and/or we find a need that due to overcrowding at a school, that we will be able to address those issues by finding space in adjacent communities. The purpose, again, or actually their process, it's not necessarily purpose, is they conduct a data analysis. They look at actual available number of seats. They look at seats based off of 2 factors, both those with portables and those without portables. It's important to look at both numbers because, again, portables provide us a great deal of flexibility, but they're not ideal long-term solutions for our schools and our communities. They also take in community input. Well, part of their process as the attendance boundary committee is they come up with typically no less than 3 options based off of their exploration and understanding of the situation and constraints that we have, and that they bring, again, a minimum of at least 3 out to the community for further discussion and or feedback. Then community meetings and forums are held. That information is brought back to the attendance boundary committee. Many of them are in attendance. So, for example, I've attended 2 of those community-based meetings, and we've gotten very good feedback in both instances from the community. But I was pleased to see members of the attendance boundary committee actually leading those discussions within with community stakeholders. It's a comprehensive process. As we've talked about, one of the shifts for the attendance boundary committee, one of the new challenges that they will take on, and it's one of our strategic plan goal areas, is the analysis of all of our school boundaries at this time. Due to our growth, due to the manner in which we're growing, due to seat capacity and other factors, if we are going to continue to be able to provide adequacy of seats for our students and families, we need to evaluate 2 things. The need to build new space, but also to evaluate what available spaces we have. And we have a number of schools that we've talked about that are not at 100% utilization. And so for us, I believe it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're trying to provide the best ROI to our stakeholders, our best return on investment for our stakeholders, and showing that we're maximizing the occupancy of our buildings. And part of that is, again, the reevaluation with special considerations. There are things that we need to address and provide assurances for based off the DSEG order that was issued a number of years ago. Planned schools in the next 5 years, they'll be establishing new boundaries for those. It's also important for us to look at, when we look at new school enrollment and we look at existing school enrollment, we've got to be specific and also very intentional to ensure that we're not creating situations where schools may be predisposed to low performance. And that is the case in some of our schools, and we need to reconsider and reevaluate those boundaries to ensure that we have a better balance of students attending those schools. They're also responsible for balancing of enrollment amongst existing schools, as we shared previously. There are 13 individuals minimally on the attendance boundary committee, one for each board member that you're allowed to nominate, one that the superintendent nominates. Mine is either myself and or the deputy superintendent, one for the Hispanic Chamber, one for the NAACP, one representing local government, one for the PTA, and one per ESE Advisory Council. Do we know what that is? Okay. Oh, my timer? We're here for a minute. Sorry. So as I said, here's the breakdown of our current membership. It's comprised of 15 voting members. We will be having one member replaced due to his future appointment to the school board. Mr. Sharpless will be coming off of the attendance boundary committee, and he has been in contact with my office and with Angela Usher's office to find out what the policy and process is for him to nominate someone else and to share information as it relates to that future position. But there are 7 appointed by school board members, again, one representing each member in each area, one by the superintendent, one by PTA, one by PEA, one by the NAACP, one by the Hispanic Chamber, one by the ESE Advisory Council, one by the land development industry, and one by local government. Membership criteria to participate in the attendance boundary committee: they must be residents of Polk County. They must be able to serve throughout the boundary cycle. It's incredibly important that we have continuity and consistency of members throughout a process, because if someone gets halfway through and we're making recommendations and then they subsequently have to come off the attendance boundary committee, it creates a great deal of conflict for a new member coming back on. It also creates potential delays in our ability to bring information to the board and to the public. Obviously, they need to be able to attend meetings. Ms. Usher's team is incredibly flexible, offering a variety of dates and times. And so I know that we just recently had the attendance boundary committee, I think last week, if not the week prior. Members are considered public officials under the Florida Ethics Code and must abide by such provisions. They're very careful to ensure that they follow the protocols that are outlined for them. Meetings are public and they are duly noticed. They're conducted in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. They're governed under the Sunshine Law, and agenda for all meetings, which include a statement that the ABC committee makes recommendations to the superintendent's office. The superintendent then takes that information to the Board of Education for further action. So the term is as long as the appointee wishes to serve. There is no term limit in this regard. We have been very fortunate to have multiple individuals, as you know, who have been capable and willing to serve for multiple years, which again, I think provides better continuity and consistency in our decision-making. The typical cycle is from September to June. A quorum is required for meetings. We must have 40% of all members present in order for the meeting to move forward. And removal typically can happen if a member fails to attend 2 consecutive meetings without cause. Again, it's important that someone who's selected and or nominated fulfills their commitment to serve in that capacity. So we do have upcoming boundary adjustments and ABC meeting dates: Lakeland Senior High School, George Jenkins High School, Mulberry High School, Fort Meade Senior, Bartow Senior, Lake Region Senior, Tenorock Senior, and Lake Gibson Senior. The next meeting dates are on November 29th, January 17th, February 14th of 2023, I apologize, January 17th of 2023, February 14th of 2023, March 21st of 2023, April 4th of 2023, and May 2nd of 2023. And the next portion was Usher will come forward with her team and make and begin the process of discussing. And I'll pause for a moment, Ms. Usher, if you will, for me to see if there are any members of the board who have any questions. And I do see that Ms. Miller has a question. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. I was at a community meeting where the DSAG order from all those years ago was mentioned. Can we get an update on where we are with that, Wes? Can you send that to the board? Thank you.
Ms. Fields?
Thank you. I just wanted to know if we could have a list of the committee members.
Absolutely. We'll give you a current list, and then I will work, after November 22nd, I'll be able to provide you with an updated list based off the fact that we will have a new member on there, and we will reaffirm the commitment of every member, so if there are any other subsequent changes, we'll inform you of that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. So are we going to be looking now at the options? Is that what we're going to be talking about next?
The next three items are options that
Okay.
the ABC looked at, and they're recommending to the superintendent for adoption.
Correct.
Okay, so I have some comments, but I'll wait. I'll wait until you're finished. Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I just, with those appointments, was there a term limit on those appointments originally? Like we do for some, like I know for sales tax oversight, it's a 3-year appointment when we appoint someone.
My understanding is there is not. So I'll defer to Ms. Usher, who's confirming.
There is no time limit. It depends
Okay.
on how long the board or the agency want them to serve.
It,
There's no time limit.
okay, it may not be a terrible idea to look at doing that, just especially as we have new board members coming on. I know that was, when I first came on, there was somebody in the seat, so I didn't have an opportunity to fill it until years later. So that may be something that we look to do similar to how we do for ABC.
Sales tax.
Or for sales tax, not to, so, thank you.
We'd have to create a timeline so that it would be appropriate for them to come off a board or a committee. So for example, doing it November 22nd in the middle of a year would not be appropriate.
Right.
However, doing it potentially at the end of the year would be more appropriate when the board elects new chairs when the board may make other nominations for other positions in committees. I apologize.
We have a staggered term too, so that we have to
Don't lose everybody.
on the board still.
Thank you.
That concludes those comments on that item. Ms. Usher is here to present on the Attendance Boundary Committee recommendations for School 21C.
Yes, good afternoon. Here with me is Mr. Travis Keys. He's the Vice President of the Attendance Boundary Committee, or Vice Chairman, and he will be representing, usually it's the Attendance Boundary Committee that presents to the board. I also have staff here, Josh McLemore, should there be questions. So Mr. Keys will go through the 3 scenarios. We have 21C, Belacita Middle, and McLaughlin High School.
Thank you, Ms. Usher. Board, Superintendent Hyde, Mr. Bridges, thank you for having me here today. If I could start off by saying probably one of the things that I love most about this committee is what I see as 2 common themes. Those are collaboration and transparency. So we meet with not only community members that are nominated by the board, but also staff members within the district. And we lean heavily on them for those recommendations as it pertains to transportation and those other factors we may not be aware of just by crunching numbers and data. So I want to say thank you to Mrs. Usher and her team, and also to all the other partners within the district staff that help us to make informed and educated decisions, because at the end of the day, what it's all about is the safety and making sure the system works for those students. So the first recommendation that we made, and this meeting started back in February originally, was the boundary zones for 21C. So I won't bore you with these things. Thank you, Superintendent Hyde, for doing such a good job at defining what we are and what we're about. That saves me a lot of time going in through this, so I really do appreciate that. Again, you guys have seen our procedures and are familiar with those. So the new elementary school at 21C is just south of Chain of Lakes, and I will tell you that this was a very hot topic. Chain of Lakes is a very loved school, revered school by those in attendance, and as much so as when we had the first community meeting after our immediate recommendation, or to prepare that recommendation, the first meeting was not very well attended, so we had a second community meeting, which was very well attended. Wonderful participation by the local community, those parents of those students that are involved. So I think that's another one of those things when I'm talking about transparency and working with the community, is we do not take that lightly. We listen to all questions and field all those questions and try to answer every single one. Those questions that we do not have the answer for are then fielded to district staff, and they are answered. So if it's something that we can't put a specific answer on, or maybe the staff that's there cannot answer, they do follow up with emails and reach those parents. That's very good. This school is in very close proximity also to Chain of Lakes, just being 2 miles south. So there are challenges when that's faced, but again, as Superintendent Hyde mentioned, the growth in the area warrants us looking at these all on an individual basis. So again, on the location, you can see here and across kind of in that map, you'll notice that there's a kind of turn in the road right across from there is a good reason why we do this, and there's a development going catty corner to where that new location is. And I will advance, and if at any time that you want me to kind of go back, speak up and I'll show these, but these are just maps that represent and illustrations of where the school is going to be, those surrounding areas, so you can see communities that are presently there, and also its vicinity to Highway 27. So as you see in this particular side, Chain of Lakes Elementary is there at the corner of 653 and Thompson Nursery Road, and if we follow that road south, we'll go to where the new school is located on approximately 30 acres, 1,292 feet of frontage, and 1,300 feet of frontage along 653. So a rather large piece of property, but well suited for that school. These are the current conditions of those. So there's nothing there right now, but development is underway. As you can see across from this picture, BNR Ranch will house 553 new single-family homes. Myself being from the northeast part of our district, I know this situation all too well, and these are the challenges that we face with every single one of these meetings. So as the superintendent stated earlier, we do try to give at least 3 options to these. We take into account the current utilization, the projected utilization after making a change, but also, again, how transportation is affected, future development, so we can say, try to anticipate what additional enrollment would be. And the goal is to keep that initial utilization for a new school to 85% or less. We don't want to create overcrowding at a school that we just built if we can at all stay away from that. Those are the changes for option number 1. You see the need for doing this is the current utilization of Chain of Lakes Elementary was 143%, definitely a problem. So this was option number 1. Option number 2 shows you the changes there, how many we're rezoning, what the utilization resulting would be from that option going down, and then also again of those how that affects the other schools in the area and current projects that are under development. So those are developments that have been approved and are currently in the works. Option number 3, again, a couple other options as far as, and if you see the maps that will accompany each of these options, it will, and I'll go back, you can see where these are most affected. So for instance, on this particular option, as certain schools, Chain of Lakes Elementary boundary zone is changed from that pocket area where the most amount of change would be. We'd essentially, if that option were to be chosen, it would take away or modify that particular section of the map. Going forward, again, another option 3, it would more focus on that southwest corner of the map. And again, we try to give as many options available. So I will add this to the conversation as typically if we come with 3 options, it is not uncommon where the committee will come back and say, hey, what if we take a hybrid of option 2 and option 3, and we go back to the district staff and they will make a 4th option at another meeting. Because again, we want to make sure that not only are we doing what's in best interest of those students, what's in the best interest of transportation, but also it's something we're not going to have to come back and rework at our next meeting. So that kind of births when we get another option, which you see option 3 with Eagle Lake and Alturas adjustments, and this was a representation of coming back to the table after the initial meeting, say, hey, we need another option because maybe some of these don't work out the way that we would like to see. So finally, with the new school 21C, the attendance boundary committee is recommending option 3. That best represents not only the utilization after the fact, but also coincides with transportation and the needs of that area. Again, as the superintendent stated, these recommendations are made to the superintendent, and at which time the superintendent would then make the recommendation to the board. Are there any questions on the first options for 21C? I know I was very quick, but we have 2 more to go through. Mr. Wilson, yes, sir.
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. So this is in my backyard. I live in Heartland Hills. And all of the options exclude the neighborhoods directly across the street from Chain of Lakes Elementary. I see that being a major problem. Those folks are not going to be happy with that. And there are a lot of homes in those two developments. So the homes that are directly across the street from Chain of Lakes, those are, there are a lot of homes in those two neighborhoods, and their children walk across the street to Chain of Lakes, right? So now you're going to bus them down the street, or you're going to make them walk 2 miles. I would respectfully suggest that that's going to be taking a stick to the hornet's nest.
I appreciate that. Not to kind of give a little insight on that is when we do look at those communities, especially those in close vicinity or outlying areas, we try not to divide up a community. So for instance, if you have a housing development that may have 253 homes, what we don't want to do as for transportation purposes is divide that community down the middle. You know, we don't want to have half the community going to one school and half to the other. So when looking at those boundaries, we try to say, okay, looking at the developments and those communities or subdivisions as a whole, what can best fit that format? Now, I will tell you that one of our biggest challenges, good, bad, or indifferent, to any of these recommendations are choice. Ultimately, school choice plays a factor in every single one of these decisions. We've come across many representations where, although the capacity of a school may be X number of students, then there's, again, another data point where there are so many students that attend that school. Oftentimes, all those students zoned for that school don't represent who goes to the school. I think also being the popularity of Chain of Lakes, that's one of the reasons we see such large numbers of current utilization and over attendance there because of school choice. So whereas we do take those into consideration, those adjoining neighborhoods and those in close proximity, I think this is one of those rare occurrences where the new school is so close, it kind of ties the committee's hands and what decisions we make.
Mr. Wilson?
So this school is going to be within 2 miles. That's walking distance. But it's a street that you have a high rate of speed. And there are no walkways. There's no way to walk there. So are we going to bus students? Is that what we're going to tell people? We're going to bus them 2 miles?
I'll have to defer. I don't know what the result of that would be, respectfully, and that would be a question for transportation.
But,
It's already something of a problem because we do have some neighborhoods that are, just down the street, and there are no sidewalks for those students, and it's coming from that direction. Now, those students would go to the new school, and I think everybody would be fine with that, but currently they're coming to Chain of Lakes.
But one of the things we committed to within the community was grandfathering students in, so no one who's currently attending the school would have a disruption in service. If there are roadway hazard issues, that's where Mr. Davis has to do his analysis in accordance with DOT standards, so that if there are no sidewalks and if there's a significant amount of road hazards, there's actually a point sheet, a rubric that they use, which would then qualify those students for transportation, even if it was less than or just at the 2 mile mark. So that would have to be continued to be reviewed. The problem we're reaching now, and the reason why option 3 was recommended, was through natural attrition, and over time, we do need to reduce the number of students currently at Chain of Lakes, or we're going to have to consider an expansion project on that campus. The growth within that community is rather large, as you know. So again, we would grandfather in everyone who's currently there, so only new attendees would be impacted, but Mr. Davis would have to do the DOT analysis to determine if the road hazards would qualify students for transportation.
Mr. Hyde, just to add, we have been working with the county. We're dedicating right-of-way, and the development, B&R Ranches, they're putting in the sidewalk, so I'm glad that condition is on them to provide the sidewalk, and they're going to do a roundabout at that intersection to help the control with traffic, and we will have to put in turn lanes and decel lanes.
But I mean, they would have to buy a right-of-way from where they currently are all the way down to the school to put in a sidewalk. So it's difficult to understand how that's going to happen. But I haven't, one of the things over the years that I've heard from our constituents and all over the county is a huge frustration with their students not being able to attend schools in their neighborhood. That is a huge frustration with our constituents, and it seems like we're doing that again. Now, I understand that Chain of Lakes needs some relief. I get that. I mean, that's why you built this school here, right? But I just have a real serious concern with neighborhoods that are literally across the street from the school and telling the parents in those neighborhoods, sorry, your kids can't go to this particular school. So those are my thoughts and my concerns. Thank you.
Ms. Fields?
This is probably a Ms. Usher question. In looking at option 3, Ms. Usher, I don't see anything on here, maybe I'm just missing it, where it shows the current capacity for the schools. It says utilization current, but it doesn't say capacity. So I'm interested in knowing what is the current capacity for Alturas and Schuylkill Elementary. And I imagine that the resultant utilization that's being recommended, for example, being Schuylkill Elementary at 76% is because we are projecting new growth in that area?
That's correct.
Okay.
We always leave, we try to keep the schools at 70-something% and not go over that so we can accommodate for growth. Alturas is very small, it's 4-something. The new capacity for the school is 996. Spook Hill is still below that also. I have my utilization chart. I thought we had the capacity here though with the utilization, maybe on another slide. But the intent is to keep the utilization at about 70-75% of the school capacity to plan for growth.
If I may, Ms. Fields, as well, I'd like to clarify. While Alturas has a capacity of over 400, it does not have the infrastructure to sustain even close to that number. We have had to intentionally limit that school to less than 300 students because the septic system and other factors will not allow us to sustain that school or any additional growth. Part of this, again, in all of the options, we tried to draw from the furthest portion of the existing Alturas community, not close in proximity to school, much like what Mr. Wilson Dr. Wilson, excuse me, it has commented. I apologize, sir. But that we would rezone those students because, again, the existing infrastructure, until such time as city sewer and water becomes available to us in the next 5 years, 7 years, we'll be able to rebuild and expand that campus. So we have to, and with the community's agreement and understanding, we've had to intentionally restrict their growth opportunity. We've actually capped enrollment at that school at a specified number. They're not there yet, but if they were to try and exceed that, we would have to reassign those students to other campuses. So I just wanted to clarify for the community, and it's a great question that you asked, that while Alturas has a seat capacity number over 400 on paper, it is not capable of sustaining that number of students.
And I appreciate you expounding on that. I just think that when we're looking at this, we need to know what the current capacity
Absolutely.
is. And then the other question that I have, and probably any one of you can answer it, is what kind of feedback did you get from the community when you all had the meeting? Specifically, were there any concerns in reference to what Dr. Wilson referenced?
Mrs. Fields, I'll go back to the Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Fields. Yes, there were a lot of concerns. All those questions were brought up. Many of those which Dr. Wilson has brought up, and that is their opportunity to share those. Again, these are recommendations that we make. This is not anything in final that's set in stone, and the committee is tasked with doing the best that we can with the information provided. We're not privy to, obviously, situations after the fact as far as they go as road construction. But to answer your question, yes, there was concerns, and it was mostly on the side of those students being rezoned from Chain of Lakes to the new school and the transportation issues that it did create. Again, our hands are tied on some of these. We have to make the best recommendation with the options that we're given. But the community outpouring was good, was very good, and I believe, based on the answers that we provided at the time, and Superintendent Hyde was there, that most of those concerns were addressed.
Well, I want to thank you for your work, because rezoning is probably one of the most difficult things that anyone can be asked to do. And looking at all of the things that you have to consider, you guys are to be commended for your work. And nothing that you're going to do is going to be perfect, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best for the students, as you said earlier, and the safety overall.
Thank you for that.
If I may, just one quick point on that. I think the committee would be happy to go back and try to see about in being more inclusive of homes that are immediately adjacent to the school. What they have done, though, is they followed the rules that are established for zoning. So it's major thoroughfares, major roads, railroad tracks, those types of things become natural breaks and barriers for zoning. If we go back, and if I were to draw a circle, for example, around the school, neighborhoods are going to be split, meaning one side of the street within a community development is going to go to this school and others are going to be zoned elsewhere. So I think we can go back and we can look, and maybe we have, quite honestly, we have that obligation to address the concerns raised here today to show what potential impact that would have. But there's no way to equitably involve or have all of those students from both communities attend the one school. There just isn't sufficient capacity. And then we would end up, as I said, or if the decision is to expand that campus, we do own the property immediately adjacent to that elementary school. The intentions are to build a middle school. And that was one of our other solutions. As all of you know, there's major traffic congestion there, which, you know, that's one of the other reasons we were looking to rezone parts of that community. But we were going to utilize that property much like we do the high schools to pull and create more of a serpentine drive to pull as much traffic off that road as we possibly can. This is a very good example of a school that was built and the neighborhood just exploded around it. And I don't think we ever had the foresight at the time, and nobody could have, about what situation we're facing. So I'd be happy to go back with the ABC committee, look at that, do the analysis one more time, and see what that might look like. But I'll show you, again, with the graphics, we'll show you how neighborhoods may be split as a result. And then again, that may further a conversation about potential expansion, building another wing on that campus. They do have the space, and it's a model that we've used successfully elsewhere, but we can explore that. So I think the points raised today are very relevant. But to Ms. Fields, I appreciate that because most people do not realize the amount of work that goes into these. These are not popular people most of the time. Well, they're not. We catch holy heck for every single issue, you know, because there's all these but what ifs. And at some point, the committee has to make a recommendation, and I have to make a recommendation to the board. So more than happy to go back and revisit this. But, you know, based off of the information we had, option 3 we felt was in the best interest of the entire, that portion of our community, based off what our current understanding, our current priorities. But again, happy to go back and explore that further.
Okay, one more thing, and then I'll be done for this one. I think Mr. Bridges probably would remember when we went through the desegregation plan, and that was a booger. And we ended up having students who, on the right side of the road, they go to George Jenkins, and the ones on the left go to Lake Gibson. And so you're splitting the community. And for me, I am not willing to do that. I won't be voting in support of that. I think that if we're talking about neighborhoods and trying to keep the kids together, then we need to make sure that they are all in the same school.
Yeah. Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. And thank you, because you really are a glutton for punishment when you volunteer to do this. I truly don't believe there's any more divisive job in the county than school boundary zones. I am very concerned about that same little pocket that we've been talking about. And for those of you that have been around as long as I've talked about Lake Wales High School, the thing that they do that drives me insane is kids across the street can't get in, which is not, we want, if we're talking about the great benefits of neighborhood schools, I think we have to find a way to keep those kids at their neighborhood school where they can walk. I do think that just in seeing the developments that keep getting approved by City of Winter Haven and the county, even leaving those students at Chain of Lakes, this new school is going to be full in the next probably 2 to 3 years. So I would love to have the committee go back and find a way to keep those neighborhoods able to go to Chain of Lakes. They're just too close. They truly are walking to school. It would be one thing if it was over a major highway, they're having to cross 27, there's no way they're walking to school, but if you've ever been around at 7:30, 8 a.m., or 2:33 p.m., there's a lot of students from that section that are walking. So I think we need to protect their right to do that, because realistically, they could not walk to 21C. Thank you. Again, I know that this is the worst job in the world, so we appreciate you doing it.
Oh.
I just want to acknowledge that Ms. Pfeiffer is here. She's on our sales tax committee and our attendance boundary committee. So she goes out there also with the rest of the community members. And Mrs. Fields, Spook Hill is 660, Chain of Lakes is 1100 with the 23 portables. Spook Hill is at 660 capacity. Chain of Lakes 1100, but it has 23 portables. The permanent capacity at Chain of Lakes is 727. Okay.
And just one more thing. I was disappointed when I opened the PowerPoint, because I know that we've talked every time that we've had recommendations brought to us about the size of the maps. So when this comes back, if we can please either get a link to the map so that we can zoom in and really see those neighborhoods, it just having it less than half of a PowerPoint doesn't really allow us to be able to get in and see exactly where the street cutoffs are. And I know that's a staff thing. That's not you. But I just want to make sure that we're able to really get in and see. I mean, I have Google Maps pulled up in the background, so I can see kind of where they are, but we need to be able to see the actual map when they come forward.
And I will springboard off that if I may. We do have access to that, and we zoom in during those meetings. And as Superintendent Hyde stated, we will be more, I'm speaking for myself, we're more than willing to come back and look at these again with further developments have come up after the fact, and do that, and have another community meeting afterwards. So.
I'm sorry, I pushed the button and cut you off. I'm so sorry. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Cunningham.
Okay. Oh, I'm on. Somebody turned me on. Okay. I was getting ready to press the little button, but whoever did it, thank you. Okay, so my comments are this. We have experienced doing this in the past when we opened up Palmetto Elementary School a few years ago. The kids that were maybe 7 or 8 houses down from the school, basically a stone's throw, were zoned to Lake Marion Creek or Laurel. One's a middle now, but at the time it was elementary. So my point is, it's not good. We need to learn from our previous mistakes. And anytime a road with children on it faces, oh my goodness, the school, where you can, as you've said, Dr. Wilson, walk across the street, whatever, there needs to be some set of guidelines where we incorporate those students and those families into the school that's quote unquote closest to them. And I know that's what we all want to do. I understand numbers and boundaries get in the way. I get that. But I would simply request, just as my colleagues have, to go back and do that, because having been on the back end of making a decision, we almost did it. We were able to salvage that a few years back and not do that to those families, because that just meant the next time a school opened up, guess what? You were being rezoned once again, and we've done that. So I'd like us to at least take a look at it. I understand there has to be compromise. There is no perfect world, and everybody gets what they want. But in my opinion, for the safety of the students and for the families living on a road that faces the particular school, I believe they should have first preference, however you say that, to go to that school. And then maybe you look at streets behind or streets over, or however you do it, to try to make it, be the best scenario that it can. And I too want to say, Mr. Keys, thank you so much. You are my appointee to the Boundary Committee, and I appreciate you volunteering all these years. You've done a tremendous job with your leadership on that committee, and I thank you and your colleagues for all that you've done. We appreciate you. It may not always feel like that, but we do. It's a lot of work, but it's also kind of educational, because then you're able to go back to the Rotaries, the Kiwanis, and so forth, and educate them on the process that we do, because it is transparent. So thank you, sir, for all that you do. And I would just look forward, Superintendent, to seeing if we're able to incorporate some of the comments, and in particular those families that are literally across the street on whatever side from the school.
Yeah, and I'll send the board, I have it here, the attendance zone criteria that are utilized. And item number 7 explicitly says, dividing a subdivision should be avoided. Developments such as planned developments may contain several subdivisions, and that's what we attempted to do in this regard. So we do abide by a certain set of rules and policies, but I'll forward this to the board just as a reminder. It does address issues such as socioeconomic and racial diversity and needs, and so it's a good opportunity. So just, you know, in our efforts to abide by the rules and not split communities and neighborhoods, that's why you have the options before you, but more than happy to go back and explore some other options. So, Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Wyatt and Ms. Cunningham for your support on this issue. I appreciate it very much. And let me say this, I realize you have an incredibly difficult job. I do. And if I appear to be difficult, it's not my intention. I think one of the things we kind of get caught up in is we're trying to find boundaries here for our students, and we lose track of the bigger picture, and that is finding a solution, right? And I think Superintendent Hyde touched on that just a little bit. There is a large enough piece of property that we own next to that school that we could expand the Chain of Lakes Elementary and also construct a second building for whatever other purpose we want. I guess that would be for a junior high school or whatever we're calling it. In addition to that, there is significant room there to build a serpentine driveway around to alleviate that traffic right there. So, you know, I think in the big picture, we should be looking for solutions instead of just saying, okay, we've got rules related to boundaries, because that kind of locks us in to a mindset. Where this new school is located, it's going to fill up. Ms. White's absolutely correct. It's going to fill up within the next few years. There's an unlimited, I wouldn't say unlimited, but there's a significant amount of property out there that's going to be developed over the next few years, and that school's going to fill up, and then you're going to be trying to figure out where to move those kids, right? So, you know, I like the idea of maybe considering, maybe a temporary hold on moving those kids until we can construct another school there and a driveway around that school that would allow us, you know, relieve the traffic that's there. You know, so looking for solutions, I think, is the most important aspect of this, as opposed to just trying to figure out what those boundaries are going to be. So thank you for your service. I know it's a tough job.
Dr. Wilson, I appreciate that, and if I could, before we move on to the next one, I would think, being from the banking background, keep in mind too that these recommendations and the option we're given are like a balance sheet. They're a snapshot of a point in time. They're not something that's permanent. So where we address these issues, we address the issues and try to make our best recommendation with the information given that's their current. And unfortunately, we can't anticipate for growth that may or not occur, and also any kind of road construction that goes too. So, but again, as I previously stated, we're more than willing to go back and look at something else. The main objective of this, though, is making sure that 21C is utilized effectively, and we don't have a school as we have on other situations in the county that's underutilized with another school just adjacent to it that's overutilized. So we'll definitely look at those considerations.
Thank you.
If there's no more questions, I want to move on to our next recommendation, and I promise.
We have one more.
Dr. Allen, yes, sir. Sorry.
Just brief, I just want to draw attention that we are recognizing that tonight National Bullying Prevention Awareness Month. So I know that you're probably going to, you get all the targets and everything. But Superintendent Hyde is going to protect you, make sure that there's no bullying in regards to your role on that committee. No, I think this important thing, Chain of Lakes, I believe, is the second highest utilization. Is that, if we look, I was just looking at that spreadsheet. Yeah. So moving from here, I guess my question would be, how do we communicate out as we are making a recommendation? So these meetings are noticed as well, right? How many, from our community was actually in attendance to some of the meetings and discussion of these recommendations? Just some of that data point would be great as we're setting the context to discuss these. Would love to hear some of that feedback. Were there, I did not get a chance to look at the minutes on those meetings in general. Just would like to have context for actually, who all participated in those. So as we're discussing some of those things. So I appreciate the work on it as well.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. And just for the board's consideration, I would tell you that I can remember, I'll give you two very good example is this one, Chain of Lakes, was held in the community meeting in the cafeteria there, and there were only space in the back corner of the cafeteria. The rest of it was full. Another one that I can remember in recent memory was Davenport Elementary. When that school was built, we held it in the commission chambers of the city of Davenport, and there was standing room only. So these are published and multiple means, Facebook and social media and all that, and quite typically the community feedback is strong, and so we enjoy that part because we don't take it lightly, taking someone's student and having to rezone them. So
Great, thank you.
thank you. Moving along, now these ones are a lot easier. That was the worst one. Less controversial, yeah. So we're going through the purpose again and procedures. We'll skip over those. The next one is for the Bella Cita Elementary expansion. As many of you know, that school was very well utilized right off the bat, and is such need in that part of the county to build a middle school. So with that being said, this reflects the expansion into middle. I would very happy to say that we didn't change anything because we're not rezoning any of those elementary school students. We're simply adding the middle school. We kept the boundary lines in place, and as those students go up through the school, they come into that middle school and able to do that. So there is absolutely no changes to that one. If any of you have any questions, I would love to hear them. No questions on that one. Go, uh-oh.
Thank you, sir. Just want to say excellent job.
Thank you.
And no, I don't have any questions. We did thoroughly, I think, discuss this at a previous workshop, and we probably needed to have built the K-8 from the start, but here it is. We're doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have. I think any time in Polk County these days, particularly in the northeast section, that you build a school, we're going to be at capacity. So this is really a blessing to be able to expand it to a K through 8. So thank you, sir, you and the committee, of course, for your work on this project. Thank you.
Thank you so
And
much.
we were able to allow, again, for this year, students and families still had the choice. For sixth grade, they could either have stayed on the campus or they could have gone to Citrus Ridge. They retained, if I recall correctly, over 92% of their enrollment, and it's gone very well. I know the principal is anxious to get some additional staff allocation, and he will because the numbers will justify that at the end of the school year with another incoming sixth grade class and sixth grade rolling up to seventh. And I know the contractors are working as quickly as they can to get the facilities operational and ready for the upcoming school year. This was a good opportunity for us and a good consolidation and a good emphasis based on the conversation we had just a few moments ago about neighborhood schools. How do you keep kids for better continuity of service and practice within their neighborhoods? It's a great opportunity for us, and we're excited. So thank you.
And I will also add that on this particular situation, that the committee had the opportunity to board a bus and tour that northeast part of the county and see the development that is occurring there. So again, none of these decisions are made lightly, and I think with us getting the most information we can, and then on this particular situation, putting boots on the ground, so to speak, and witnessing that development firsthand only helps us and aids us into making a well-informed decision.
I do not see any further comments or questions, sir.
Thank you. Moving right along, another easy one. We'll go through that. This is McLaughlin Middle. Again, this is adding additional grade levels. So with the next slide, you'll see that with the addition of 6, 7, and 8, and then, or 6, 7, 8 currently, and then going that into a middle high school format. Obviously on this one, again, and we didn't make any changes to the current boundary of that school. Keep in mind that on this particular situation, we battle school choice also with the Lake Wales Charter School System in that. But we did not change any boundary of that area, so to speak. And as a matter of fact, in doing our research and looking at options, the boundary that is currently in place very closely mimics the original boundary for Lake Wales Senior High School. So I think that this is the absolute best of those options. We had option 1 where the choice is showing the resulting utilization reduction in the area. And then another option 2 was the recommendation that we made. Again, option 2 we did resulted in no change. If you see, and excuse me, let me go back here. In option number 1, and the difference between that and 2, we take out that portion of Winter Haven High School. But again, we didn't make any changes to the current boundaries that are in place. Any questions on that one?
Thank you. I just had a question. So it looks like we have 2 slides for option 2. The first one,
Well, I don't mean to interrupt. We do, because the second one just says that's a recommendation. It's the same one repeated.
okay, well, the second one also shows it as, I think it may just be a typo. For the resulting utilization, it shows Winter Haven would stay at 103%, but those students would be moving
That is
correctly.
correct.
And then my second question is, it looks like on option 2, it takes a little piece of Lake Region, and Lake Region is highly underutilized still, correct, Superintendent? Correct me if I'm wrong. But is there a reason that we would take part of Lake Region? And if so, how many students is that?
So
That light blue up in the corner?
We'll have to get you those numbers, Chair. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a reason for that? Because it would be moving them significantly further away from where their current school is, I believe, and across 27. I'd be interested to know why we're looking to move those Lake Region students.
Of the 3, this is the conversation I recall the least, quite frankly.
Okay.
So I'll defer to committee if we have recollection of that discussion. Ms. Usher, do you recall?
We just mirrored the existing boundary from McLaughlin at the middle school. We took that to the high school also.
Correct, sorry.
Like impacted those high schools.
So,
Okay.
and I'll tell you, and option number 1 would have actually changed the boundary of that.
Right.
Whereas option number 2 kept it the way it is. And I will say that, keep in mind too, that this was before our task that we have before us now in the comprehensive rezoning. And then we are trying to eliminate those pockets, or take away from any that's out of the area. If you see kind of an totally unrelated subject, in the middle of that boundary, it looks like, a little bit north of Lake Region, you see there's a little pocket of Lake Region there. Those are the type of things that we're trying to get away from. So being that this is an add to the school, keeping the currently boundary lines in place as they were already seemed like the best fit, knowing that we're going through a comprehensive rezoning coming up. And at that point, we'll have new data points and be able to look at that again, because, again, we don't want to change them twice either. So that's a good point, because I think what you'll see in some of that is the utilization of Lake Region will change with the comprehensive rezoning that's coming up now, and be better utilized than it is currently.
But it would not affect those students again.
No, it should not.
Those students are grandfathered in, so it only impacts students, again, each year as they roll up. But given the variety of choice that we have in our district, quite frankly, if families are interested in pursuing other options, they will have those. Lake Region will see some growth in the next few years. There'll be a programmatic enhancement to that school that I will be bringing to you in the very near future that I think is going to draw a great number of students to that campus, because it is one of our campuses that's underutilized, and it's an exciting opportunity. Again, and I apologize, I did not recall, again, just for clarification, in case if it was lost in translation, all they did was take the existing middle school boundary and overlay it, and it was in order to maintain that, so that there wouldn't be any disruptions or confusion for families. Well, my middle schooler attends here, why doesn't he or she attend McLaughlin? There could still be an adjustment, because again, school choice would allow that student to matriculate to McLaughlin regardless, even if they weren't naturally zoned for that school. So there is, again, I just want to make sure we clarified that point.
Thank you. If we could still get the numbers for Lake
Absolutely.
Region's utilization isn't included, so if we could get those.
Yes, ma'am. I have that, actually. Ms. Usher sent me the updated report just last week, so I will provide that to the board. So you'll have all schools again like I did previously.
Perfect. And then my only other comment is just as we're looking at all of the boundaries, especially those that we've already changed, there's a lot of pride in families if we all went to the same school. So especially as we're changing the same school, and, yes, great if we can grandfather in the one student that's already there, but making sure that if families want to attend these that we've already changed once, that we have opportunities for that as well. I know school choice solves some of that, but I just want us to be cognizant of that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think the theme here was exactly as Superintendent Hyde said, those students that are currently enrolled at McLaughlin Middle having the opportunity, not changing the boundary zone, to go into the high school with the added numbers. I will say too that, speaking of, and I've heard a couple of times now, the real numbers. So, we see utilization percentages, but what does that mean? We see those numbers when we make the decisions. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I always ask, for your knowledge, is how many ESC students are we displacing? Potentially. So the staff does a very good job at showing us real numbers. Percentages only tell part of the story, but seeing how many of those students are actually moved, we get those numbers, and we look at every single option over and over again. Sometimes, again, like I stated at the beginning, making more options. So, but that is a very good question, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Ms. Fields.
My question is similar to the other one about the current capacity for Frostproof Senior and Bartow Senior and Frostproof Senior. And there was a meeting held, and what kind of response did you guys get from parents on this?
So to the best of my knowledge, we did not have a meeting on this because we did not change any boundary lines. So the only time that we would have a community meeting is if we were changing boundary lines and then displacing students. This particular situation, because it is an addition to, and they will go up to that school, we didn't change any boundary lines, therefore we didn't have a community meeting for it.
So, Mr. Hyde, how are we going to get input from parents?
So
with
after
concerns?
if the board has that interest, again, as was described, there are certain instances we don't normally go out and ask for feedback. This is one. The other would be when we're zoning undeveloped property. There's no one who resides there, so there's not really a conversation to have. And that's really where the Attendance Boundary Committee is going, is we have a lot of undeveloped properties. Now is the time for us to act proactively, knowing on the future developments that are coming, to start to align and rezone those. This is it's a unique opportunity for a district who's growing at the speed in which we are. But we'd be happy to go back out. I know the McLaughlin community supports this boundary. I do know that because that conversation has been had with Dr. Hudson. And many of the people within the community, many of the members currently within that community. If there were concerns, we could inform other parents as to your point and Ms. Wyatt's earlier question or concern, that if this were to erode future boundaries of where their children currently attend, we would just simply provide them the reassurance that they could school choice option into those campuses if they so chose. But so that doesn't necessarily impact zoning in and of itself.
Okay, as long as we have a plan of
Yes,
action.
ma'am.
Absolutely. With that, my portion is over as far as recommendations. I do want to finish up with my portion saying that I
It's
encourage.
too quick, Lori. I'm sorry, it was too quick.
Well, and I'm sorry for that. But I do want to say this too, is that I encourage each of the board members to take those numbers that we see and especially pay attention to the school choice and how that affects. If you look at what the current utilization is based on what the current capacity is, and then look at school choice as an effect, I think, well, I would hope that you wouldn't be too surprised that you'd know that already, but it does play a major role, and is one of those things that we have to address and try to do our best with the data that we're provided. Superintendent Hyde, sorry.
Ms. Cunningham, this is your appointee.
And he's doing a fine job.
Yes,
Let me
ma'am.
just say that. He should get promoted soon. We'll put it in for you, promotion.
I think Mr. Brown is happy.
Is he really? Okay, awesome. My comment was just that I really do support the zones that you presented today, because again, you want the students that are already zoned for that school to continue to be able to go to that school. If we were talking 150, 200 kids, maybe there'd be some discussion, but with it being up to maybe 40 and then the school choice piece, I think you leave that zone in place so that those kids have the opportunity to matriculate up into high school after they've been going to that school. So I do support what you presented to us today, and I just wanted to be on record saying that. Once again, thank you for all you do. We appreciate you.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you to the board. I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the questions. Ms. Wyatt, I'm sorry.
Chair Wyatt, there's two more.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Fields, for asking about the a community meeting. I didn't realize that we don't have community meetings unless it affects students leaving the school. In the future, I would encourage us to have a meeting to make sure that those, I mean, rezoning 900 students away from Bartow High School is a big deal. So I would much rather us be able to have that conversation with parents on the front end and explain to them what's happening and, you know, that there's opportunities for choice, but that needs to happen before it comes to us in the future. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson.
So I'm going to apologize in advance for not knowing the rules related to school choice, but, so this is just a question for Superintendent Hyde or his staff. I'm certain we have a number of students at Chain of Lakes who are there by choice and not in that particular boundary. Is it possible to allow the students who are, you know, across the street in that neighborhood to get first choice, to have first choice? Is that a possibility?
You can create a priority structure for school choice and options. Typically, there's a point system that would be established, and it makes it more competitive. But yes, that is one of the reasons why we actually have multiple choice windows, and there are priority options for families currently. So we'd have to explore that somewhat. But I like the idea of going back. I think with respect to the questions and concerns that were expressed today, we should go back, do our due diligence, and at least be able to articulate and show the board in a meaningful way how approaching it differently might disrupt neighborhoods, or it may not. We may find a natural barrier within a community that we may be able to embrace, and then school choice could become an option for the remaining. So I'd like the opportunity to check that. But yes, you can provide and create a point system for applicants in choice. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and again, it's not my intention to disrupt the work you've done. I think that's important work, but how do we find a solution? You know, this is a very serious problem. I assure you it is. It may not appear like it is now, but it will be. And so how do we find a solution to that? You know, and there's got to be something we can do to, you know, move some sort of positive solution forward. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson, thank you.
Thank you, sir. You're done.
I'm done?
You are.
For real this time?
You are for real this time.
Again, thank you to the board. I appreciate you, Mr. Bridges, for being here, and Superintendent Hyde. This is, as much as it's not a popular thing, I can assure you that everybody on the committee serves with purpose and enjoys doing so. So thank you all.
And I'll brag about you as you leave and Ms. Usher comes forward. He's also a very proud dad because he was all over social media yesterday bragging about his child's report card. So I'm going to, as your kindergartner, if I recall correctly.
Since you brought it up, Superintendent, and taking up more time, glad I don't have a timer, but yes, both of my students, or my students, my daughter's straight A's, and my fifth grader has never had a B, and as a matter of fact, my fifth grader, when she tested her last test, scored perfect on her assessment test. So I'm not to get on a platform, but that wouldn't be possible without the wonderful support she gets at her school. So thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, what I'd like to do is proceed and get Ms. Usher to finalize the last of the facilities capital items before you. And then after that, if we may, we can take a 10-minute break.
Okay, it's me again. Good afternoon. Every year I come to the school board with an update to the 5-year capital plan. We update it annually. It is a fluid document, but we look at population projections using in-migration, residential development, and the cohort survival method. So based on the population and population changes, we add capacity projects. We also add modernization projects with the sales tax, and also we continue with the major maintenance.
Before you go any further, Ms. Usher, I had a question from one of the members of the board as to does this plan still reflect the priorities that you had previous discussion with the school board members? And if I recall correctly, you said yes.
Yes. When the sales tax was adopted, I met with the school board members and we went through their priorities, and it does reflect their priorities.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, now this thing, how do you move it up? Next slide. Okay, good. I always go through accomplishments. We had Bartow High School, we had phase 1, which was building 43. Then we have phase 2, building 49. And we have and that is completed. We're I'll get to the other one. We're working on phase 2B. Mulberry High School, we're finishing up all our site work. We do parking lot additions and improvements. For example, we're doing that at Ben Hill Griffin. We're doing interior painting of schools every summer, and we did Summerlin, Sites Elementary, Citrus Ridge. We try to do at least 4. We do covered walkways, chiller replacement, and AC upgrades like we did at George Jenkins. Drainage improvements, for example, at Haines City, Lake Alfred. And the security projects we continue doing. We're done with the intercom. We have done some fire alarm, but we're still working on that. We're done with single point of entry. We're working on the blue poles and the large number letters. Now, our ongoing project, Bartow High School Phase 2B, this is where we come back with the clinic, the field house, the emergency, the medical academy, the criminal justice academy, and so we're working on completing that right now. We also started replacing Medalla Elementary cafeteria, so work has just begun on that. We are in construction for the Denison Middle School gymnasium. With the covered walkways, we have several. We have Winston and Auburndale, but we have Bridge Technical. We have Davenport School of the Arts. Just want to give you some example. Electrical upgrades at Bartow and Bartow High. Parking lots, we're working at one at Philip O'Brien. We're doing major HVAC replacement and upgrades, especially with our ESSER funds right now. We're doing HVAC replacement at Ben Hill Griffin, at Lawton Childs, and we're buying a number of scholar units to replace at like 15 schools. Again, I mentioned drainage improvement. Roof projects are ongoing. We have that. It just keeps moving. We're working on the administrative suite at Babson Park Elementary, and that should be completed early next year. That's where I got into that, the Babson Park Elementary. Lakeland Clinic is the end of this year also. Lake Will Support Services, we're just about done with that, finalizing the plans. Lake Gibson Senior will do that over the Christmas break. I mentioned we're working Denison Middle, Medalla. We're working McLaughlin Gymnasium, and we're completing the auditorium at Rochelle. Schools to be completed next year. We have Fred Garner, complete modernization with an additional capacity of about 150. We have Southwest Middle, complete modernization with an additional capacity of 400. New Elementary School 21C, a capacity of 996. Velacita Middle School addition, about 500. And the new K-8 school that's being built on Scenic Highway. In the projects I mentioned here under modernization, I did discuss this with the board members, and we looked at different criteria in prioritizing our modernization. We're getting ready to start on Albert Elementary, modernizing that school. Then we have Lena Vista, then Juanita, Lake Alfred, Floral, Alta Vista, Crystal Lake, and Westwood. And again, every year I bring this back to the board, so if we want to change priorities, but we are starting with Albert because that was the next one in line. We're also starting on a gymnasium at Lake Gibson. We have hired the architect, and he's looking at that, but we have to complete gymnasium at Lakeland Highlands and Bartow Middle, and we also added the Blake Academy Gymnasium. The other projects, since McLaughlin is a high school, we're gonna, after the gymnasium, we're gonna do the auditorium and upgrade the fields and locker rooms. We're gonna replace Spook Hill Cafeteria for 2 reasons. It needs replacement, and we need EHPA in that area, so we'll increase it and make it a hurricane shelter. James Stevens, we've been working with Ms. Everett. I know they're part of the grant, and it really does need interior remodel. We cannot tear it down based on the state, but we will remodel the inside. Louis Ann Woodbury, we have permission to tear the dining room down, so we're still working on that. Lake Region High School agricultural classroom, I had brought that to you before, and we had that like at 700,000. We did CM. We did hard bid, and it came in like 1.8 million, and that's why we deferred it. But now we're looking at it again and see if the market has leveled off. So that is one of the other projects we probably will be doing soon. Plan new schools. We have in the Northeast, we own property off of Highway 27 behind the hospital. That is for middle school. We also have an elementary school site there. We're looking at a possible new high school in the East Northeast area, and we're looking at places where the utilization is getting high, where we might have sufficient core to do a classroom addition. I worked with Finance Department on the projected revenues. And again, from sales tax, well, impact fees, we hold that steady at 35 million. That is just to be cautious. With sales tax, we have that in the 60s, 69 in the last year, going up to 70. LCI, that's the local effort. And I must say, this money is not just for facilities. It's divided between transportation and technology and other departments. CO and DS, capital outlay and debt service, this is just for facilities. So for the 5 years, we have just under $1 billion. I want to stop here and talk a bit about the work plan. The work plan is required per the state under Florida statutes 1013.35. It reflects the 5-year capital plan. We just have to do it in their format. So it has our expenditures and our revenues, our projections, and the expenditures and revenues, they have to be balanced. It identifies our capacity projects, all other major maintenance projects. It talks about, we have to go in detail with every school, number of classrooms, portables, how we coordinate with local governments, and the long range and 10 and 20-year projections. And this we bring to the board every year for adoption. It mirrors the 5-year plan, but it's required by the state. Now with the forecast, we have this going out to 2631, and we have the population changing from 26 to 31, 116,000. And you can see it's broken down by elementary, middle, and high school. We're planning to add 3,849 more elementary student seat. The middle school, it says 1,308, but it's more like 2,300. High school, 2,500. So those are the capacities we hope to have in place by 2031. And the areas for this, we have properties for these schools already. We have Central County, 2, Northeast County, 1. We have additions to various schools, middle school additions, that's where the 3,000 capacity is shown, and high school additions at 2,000, and that is the timeline. This shows the properties we have for these schools already. If we don't own them outright, we're in negotiation with developers like Thompson Nursery, different people coming in Auburndale to acquire these sites. In 2041, in the next 10 years after 2031, we'll need 6 more elementary schools, 2.5 more middle schools, 1.5 more high school. And we do have some of these properties, but again, we have to, luckily we did do a lot of land banking. For example, on Scenic Highway, we have a high school and elementary. In Poinciana, we have an elementary. So we do have quite a number of these properties already. And that's it. Thank you.
Hi, I have 2 questions. Back to the gymnasiums, because I've talked about this for 4 years now. Lake Gibson, can they go on at the same time, or are we building one at a time at this point? Like, I was hoping to get Lake Gibson. Do you have a projected date? Because we have the architect out now, but are we going to do multiple builds on those at the same time?
Denison is being completed, so we're starting on Lake Gibson to be completed next year.
Okay, and thank you. And my second question is, the property we purchased off Berkeley, is there a proposed date for the Auburndale Central stand ball, whatever we're going to do with that? I don't see that in here.
Yes, it is. It's in the capital plan that's attached to the agenda item. We do have that in the plan. I think we have it for 27.
27. Okay, that's the date I missed. So when you have those plans, do we just, other than immediate needs, we don't invest in those schools that we're going to move? Like Auburndale Central and the age of that school.
We do have to do maintenance and it could be from middle school, 1.5 years, 2 years. So if they have some issues, like at Auburndale Central, we are replacing the covered walkways.
Okay.
And then I have to bring that back to the board because it has not been decided what we'll do with Auburndale Central when Stanbaugh moves to the new school.
And it's projected 2027, but everything can change that. You mentioned Auburndale and Thompson Nursery Road like in the same breath, but that's not close together. So can you?
The reason I said that because we have a school site a school located in the Auburndale area.
Right.
And we're working with their staff in getting an elementary school. And also in the Thompson Nursery, we're working with the developer right now to get a site there. And that's why I mentioned them as new school sites. Sorry about that.
And Auburndale, you're looking for a new elementary site.
correct,
That's what you're
right.
saying. And can you update me on the location of that after you discuss whatever?
Certainly I will.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, update on the potential elementary site in
Potential
Auburndale?
elementary.
Yeah, we'll bring that back to the board for a conversation. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Wyatt? I'm sorry, I double-clicked. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My first question is on the modernizations and renovations and additions list, Lake Alfred, is that Lake Alfred Elementary or Lake Alfred Polytech?
Lake Alfred Elementary.
Okay. The second question I have is where are we getting our numbers for the 20-year capacity needs? Because I'm very concerned that we're only estimating 12,000 additional students between now and 2041, considering we got 6,000 additional students this year.
I want to clarify that this is only in school district-owned facilities. It does not include private charter, it does not include homeschool, and it does not include private school. Our numbers come from the State Department. It comes from all our meetings with the various cities, with their development approvals. And like right now, we know we have like 45,000 units approved. We meet with them, we look at their build-out rate, we look at in-migration, we look at birth rates, and the cohort survival, and we compare that with different cities and with the state. And we are higher than the state numbers right now.
Okay. I'm really concerned that we're only thinking it's going to be 12,500 because I would be willing to bet a lot that it will be more than that. I believe the 6,000 that we were up this year, the majority of those were in our district and in the district-owned schools. So I think we need to be planning for more would be my biggest concern, but I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, right. We're looking at 114,000, almost 115,000 right now. But I'd have to go back through and double check and make sure that there's no charter schools included in it. I don't see any, based off the total numbers I'm looking at, but I'll provide you with that analysis because that number stood out to me as well.
I mean, even when you were first hired, we talked about we were going to be 150 by 20. It's seeming closer and closer to 2030. So that number scares me. But
Yeah.
thank you.
Ms. Fields?
I had one question on the early learning centers. Can you give me the names, the locations of those centers?
Mrs. Fields, we had one certainly at Willow Oak. The second one was planned for Garner Elementary. We have not started on that because of the high fluctuation in costs. So we're hoping that it will settle down and we can do more. I have to meet with the new head of pre-K to relook at those locations and see where we need to put those early learning centers.
Okay, and the other question that I have, I don't know if it's your question or Mr. Hyde question. How do we review when we think there's a need for some additional support for facilities like West Area Dock? I mentioned that, Mr. Hyde, when we had a conversation. How do we get that, if we have a concern, how do we get that on the list?
Most of the time, it comes directly from the school. We have been working with the departments in West Area Adult, doing some improvements there. But if we identify it for a reuse, then we will make the changes to bring it up to meet the needs of whatever we plan to use it for. Are you thinking similar to Davenport Elementary, a complete modernization?
I don't have anything specifically in mind. I just know that school is very old, and I know that we have our preschoolers and Head Start kids there now, and it needs a lot of work.
And we have planned to work on that next year. We're doing classrooms, we're doing new bathrooms. I think the lady is Lori, we're working with her with all that. So the offices moved in now, but then next year the students will move in, and we're working to make classrooms and bathrooms in every classroom for the students.
So now, how does that fit on this list, or does it not?
It's major, because we'll be doing it mainly with our staff members, so it's major maintenance.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Going off of Ms. Kay's comments, did East area and West area actually migrated to our technical centers? Is that correct?
Correct.
So as she's speaking of West area, I mean, basically East area and West area, those campuses were shut down, correct? They're not.
No.
Because when I was on Travis campus, I mean, we have West area that has now migrated to Travis campus. Is that correct? So as we're talking about some of the things that she's addressing, are we talking about on Travis campus?
If we're going to do improvements at Travis?
Yeah, because that's where West area is now housed,
Yes,
correct?
and we did add capacity there to house the west area. In regards to complete modernization and Travis, we have not identified that. We have some engineers out there right now looking at the different spaces and see if there's a need for us to upgrade that. So we have contracted with an engineer to do that. West area has pre-K and also virtual, so it has not been closed down.
Okay. So in that conversation, I think there's an opportunity. I think we're missing out an opportunity to create some synergy around East area and West area as it relates to Travis and some of the CTE opportunities. And I'd submitted that idea during our last board meeting as a possibility to place on the 5-year capital improvement plan. I was looking, and I'll just leave it at that. I think there's an opportunity if we look at, in general, the number of college applicants across the board has been on a decline. And I think there's a huge need, I think, in our community to give a little bit more emphasis on CTE in regards to pipeline coming out of our academies into Travis and Ridge. This is a great opportunity for us. We're seeing some great things happening around the state at other technical centers, and I think we're missing out on that for our community in general. Looking at last year's capital improvement plan, I did see that the priority scale sort of changes, and so I would like you to speak to that. So, for example, in the modernization, I see that Crystal Lake bumped down on your list quite a few slots. So, like, what is the rationale? Like, when something changes and you adjust those, do we get some rationale comparative to when I was looking at last year's capital improvement plan? That would be my first thought, and just wanting to hear on that.
Okay, to answer that, we did use like 5 criteria in evaluating the modernization: age, utilization, adequacy of space, the percentage of buildings over a certain age. And we did put Crystal Lake there, but when we went back and looked at the condition assessment, to be fair, it was not Crystal Lake. So I'll just be honest, that's why it's not there.
So those things, they can actually change within a year, the things that you just listed?
Certainly, if Mr. Hyde comes to me and said a board member would like us to move the priority, once I started it and we hire an architect.
Respectfully, that's not a board member.
No.
That would be a conversation with the board as an
That's correct.
entity as a whole.
That's correct.
A board member can initiate that conversation and demonstrate an interest, but then I would bring that to the board for discussion. But I want to make very clear, individual board members cannot identify pet projects for renovation and/or construction.
Any changes to the plan will have to come back to the board, like any project over 250,000, you will have to approve.
Yep.
So even though I have these in the capital plan, when I set up the projects, they'll all come back to the board.
Okay. So yeah, just noting, when we make a change from year to year, I would like to hear a rationale why something gets bumped down the line. As we, also you've got Lakeland Highlands there. Could you maybe give me a little timeline on that one for the gymnasium?
I think that's next after Lake Gibson. We have Lake Gibson, then Lakeland Highland, and then we have Bartow.
Okay. So is there like a time frame?
We're trying to do one a year. If we get more money, then we will do them concurrently. But right now, we're planning for one a year.
All right, great. And then just lastly, I think going off of Chair Wyatt and thinking about those projections and so forth, what is our utilization at Willow Oak?
Willow Oak is still below, much below capacity.
Okay.
It's not at capacity.
Yeah. And the reason I'm asking about Willow Oak is, as we look at that central area, I see that we've got that elementary school that's projected at 2029. And if we look at some of the capacity in that western corridor of central Lakeland area, there was thoughts that Bruce Wagner was going to get relief because of Willow Oak coming in. However, they did not get the relief that was projected. So as we look at that Riverstone and just all that development that's happening out there, are we adequately addressing some of the utilization capacity issues that we're having in that corridor? So
We're aware of that, and the utilization is countrywide, not just in that area, and that's why I kept the vacated Kingsford site, so we can rebuild an elementary school there if needed. And it's not something that we only do once a year. The cycle starts over like tomorrow. We're already working on the projection, so it's continuous. And we looked at every area and prioritized the need for capacity.
Willow Oak is currently at 87% utilization. There are 41 students above their projected enrollment for this school year. They're at 876 as of Survey 3.
Yep. If we look at Bruce Wagner, they're at 103%. Is that correct?
I'm looking. $92 and $105 respectively for their, well, again, one includes portables. So inclusive of the portables, they're at 92% utilization, or at 105 if we were to take the portables off their campus.
Yep. So I'm just wondering where those families are sending their kids that are going to be moving into that Riverstone area. What other elementary schools do we have in that area that have capacity?
I will have to look at all the surrounding schools and see their utilization and see if there is a need for a boundary change or not. See where we have capacity to send them to.
Okay. Because I was then comparing, if we look at Mulberry Middle, Lakeland Highlands Middle, and obviously we're in the process of increasing capacity at Southwest Middle with our build there.
But, I mean, again, this is where the comprehensive rezoning has to come into the conversation, because as you push east, there is more than adequate capacity at Scott Lake and others to absorb. They're at 79% utilization and 86%, 79% with their portables and 86%. So again, what typically has happened with rezoning is we've addressed issues that are immediately in front of us with new construction or renovation. We've not looked, and very few school districts do, and we've been growing so quickly. It's now time to take a step back and look comprehensively at rezoning. And as difficult as the conversation was earlier, it's going to get more difficult, because there are families who have attended, can say that, well, you know, we've attended this school for 3 generations, and they're going to be rezoned to another neighborhood. Because otherwise, we're going to end up still with what we have now. Pockets of schools that are largely underutilized, and there's not an ROI there for our taxpayers. We need to look again comprehensively at how we're rezoning schools, or how we're zoning schools, and we also have to look to ensure that we're balancing the enrollment at schools, so we're not predisposing students, families, and or schools to failing. That's a reality. We have some schools that currently the way they're zoned, it significantly impacts their ability to perform academically. So we need to take in several factors into consideration. Again, these will be recommendations. The board, you know, ultimately has the tough task of accepting those recommendations or directing me to approach this problem differently. But that's currently the issue. And again, the best example I can give people is that Polk County is suffering from middle-age spread. You've heard me say that, right? We're growing love handles on each side of the county and house. From personal experience, right? I'm not commenting about anybody else at the dais. But the reality is that means that some of our schools located in the heart of Polk County are not seeing turnover, are not seeing new families moving in, and as a result are largely underutilized. And so rezoning is the only option to address those issues, or, as we've talked about, enhancing them programmatically so that they become more attractive for schools' choice options. School choice has contributed to our issues and concerns over time, and that comes at the cost of giving families and students choice, options that they can pursue for better academic programs, more rigor, or things that are aligned to their personal interests. And that's fine, we'll continue to embrace that. But this is a much, much larger conversation that needs to happen, and we'll be having it over the next few months. So, but there are options going east. I'm not aware of options to the west. I'd have to explore that a little bit further with Angela
Yeah.
and her team.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
Kind of going back to that estimate of population, because I know we've talked in the past, even though we have charter and private schools, we have to plan and build for the students because we can't guarantee they're going to stay at those facilities.
Correct.
And so I'm also a little concerned with the numbers, so I think we should just make sure we keep an eye on that. I know they're going to come in and supplement what we're doing, but we haven't had, history has shown that the kids, a lot of the time, end up back in our schools. And so I feel like a lot of the population growth we will be affected by, and very quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Look at that.
Seeing no further questions, thank you, Ms. Usher. At this time, members of the board, Madam Chair, if it benefits you, we will take a 10-minute recess. So the time is presently 2:33. I'll ask everybody to come back. It'll be 12 minutes. We'll be back at 2:45. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow, do I need my thing?
Oh, I know. I heard you.
When you build a culture where we're always assessing what you know, I want to know, what do you know? I care about what you know.
Right.
Kids are starting to build a culture where they'll walk up to you, let me tell you what I know.
Yeah.
You know, and where did you learn that? Oh, I learned that in third period today. So they're able to recall because we're always questioning what they learned, but the core of that comes from common planning.
It's early morning at Union Academy, but that doesn't slow down the Bluegrass Band as they serenade the gathering crowd in the cafeteria. They are all here to celebrate this man, J.J. Corbett, one of the first black paratroopers in World War II and longtime teacher, coach, and school board member at Polk County Public Schools. In honor of his years of service, Union Academy is naming their media center after Mr. Corbett.
We have a very unique setting here at Union Academy, and it's only based in our history. With Mr. Corbett being here today and us naming the media center after Mr. Corbett specifically, we're putting his name on the building to represent that history.
I want to thank all of my friends who are here for this honor, and I look back and wonder, do I deserve it? I hope that I've lived the kind of life that this honor could be in my name.
To find out more about the dedication, check out our news story at polkschoolsfl.com/news.
My name is Paul Peterson. I am an art teacher at Southwest Middle School, and for the past 5 years or so, we've been making skateboards in my class. I remember the Polk County School Board mission statement a few years ago talked about rigor and relevance. And what I found in 20 years of teaching, that the kids are learning all these skills, but they're not able to apply them in a relevant way to where they are right now. So by making the skateboards, They're able to incorporate the math, science, and artistry of taking a raw material to a finished product that they can go out and actually physically use.
At Southwest Middle School in Lakeland, Florida, art teacher Paul Peterson dives into the art of fusing academics with woodworking and design, re-sparking vocational and academic skills that had previously faded. There's always a beginning to any endeavor, and Mr. Peterson started less than 5 years ago.
In 2014, Lakeland was a sponsor city for InnoSkate, and that year we hooked up with creativeskate.org, and we made about 50 skateboards.
With the will and a way to do so, Peterson regularly involves his students in the physical process of making skateboards, making it a fun and educational experience for everyone.
I work with the kids and we design what kind of skate they want to ride for the type of riding they want to do. And we get Baltic birch ply, which is a hardwood that's cut down to a 1/16 of an inch, and we layer 9 layers of them together in a 12-ton hydraulic press. All right, I need your help, guys, because you always, every time you glue something, you got to do sound effects, and since we're on film, ready? Oh! That takes a very thin, relatively flimsy piece of wood and allows us to put curves in it, and by layering so many layers together, it'll support the weight of a full-grown adult.
While standardized testing and feature readiness have become a dominant focus in schools today, Mr. Peterson's vocational involvement gives light to the dynamic importance of applying real-world knowledge. His methods raise the standards for student achievement and instills fundamental basics of history, math, science, and even economics.
I want to keep making them because I want to keep writing them, honestly. It's just a fun thing to do. It gets a lot of students really interested in my subject matter rather than just getting put in an art class that they may or may not be too interested in. At this age, a lot of my students are less concerned about the classics, the Greeks and the Renaissance, but you talk skateboards, hot rods, and graffiti, they're loving it and they're learning the same skills with perspective, color, shading, and so on. And once I get them hooked, then I can bring in a little bit more of the history of where all these skills came from.
This is my board. I painted it with zombies. It probably took me about a week or 2 to paint this.
This one right here is one of my favorites. Her name is Taylor Haynes. She did this, I believe, her 6th grade going into her 7th grade year, so she is about 12 when she painted this skateboard.
Once the kids finish designing, cutting, and painting their board into a final product, they finally get to experience what it's like writing something entirely of their own creation.
We kind of have like a freedom to do kind of whatever we want on the boards. Of course, you're not painting on paper or drawing on paper. It's a little different, and if you know how, you can write it and kind of be proud of what you've done.
What I found with my students is it really seems to empower them to go out and earn the money to participate in the program themselves rather than asking mom and dad. And the beauty of it is no 2 skateboards are exactly alike.
They work collaboratively in groups, discovering their own talents, intelligence, and self-confidence. All vital ingredients to building a better future of role models, one skateboard at a time.
session starts right now.
Pilot season of the Polk County Public Schools Esports League has come to a close with a fantastic championship tournament. 6 high school teams battled it out in a single elimination bracket, vying to be the first PCPS Esports champions.
Gibson gets the goal!
In the end, it was Frostproof Middle Senior that took the top prize, beating Ridge Community High in overtime.
Frostproof hitting it to the net! Oh! What a finish by Frostproof to win the championship!
I mean, I'm shaking right now. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. We've been working all year for this, and we finally made it.
To find out more about our esports league, visit polkschoolsfl.com/esports.
I think I probably need to. How many more days?
Are you gonna eat these?
All right, and we are back, and I will turn the meeting back over to Superintendent Hyde.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'd like to bring Wendy Dodge, Senior Director of Legislative Affairs and Policies, to the front. She's going to walk you through some policy updates.
And I apologize, before Wendy comes down, all mics are hot until further notice. They're working on it in the back. There's a glitch, so just so everyone knows.
We need a ledge. I guess that's our ledge. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
See everybody. It's nice to be able to speak to you and have my voice work. I'm excited about that. So before you this afternoon, we have, first of all, a staff recommendation for policy updates. And this should look familiar to you because this is the overtime pay during emergencies policy that you approved as an emergency item. And so what we're doing here is bringing it forward, the exact same language forward, to make it a permanent policy. The next set of policy updates are Neola recommended updates. I'll go through them by number and title, and then you tell me if you have any questions or would like to review any of the language. 2215 is Program of Instruction. 2410 is School Health Services. 2417, Comprehensive Health Education. 3213, Student Supervision and Welfare. 3590 is personnel files, and this would be replicated. The last two that I just mentioned would be replicated in the support services and administrative sections as well. 5335 is care of students with chronic health conditions. 5780, student parent/parents' rights. 6233, district budget. 6661, instructional materials allocation. 8100 is interlocal agreements. 8141 is mandatory reporting of misconduct. 8405 is school safety and security. 8407 is school safety officers, and 8420 is emergency management, emergency preparedness, and emergency response agencies. So was there anything in that set of policy updates that you had any specific questions or need clarification on?
Give it one moment, Ms. Dodge.
Sure. Technology's fun.
Ms. Dodge, I'm not seeing any requests from board members to speak and/or, oh, spoke too soon. Dr. Allen.
Right.
How does that look like as far as implementation? I know we're already addressing and doing some of these things, but I don't know if Superintendent Hyde can maybe speak to that.
The technical issues?
I think that's a great idea because I don't think Dr. Allen's mic is working.
It is not, and I
I'm not
attempted to
sure
turn
if-
it on as well.
Yeah. So we'll recess for 10 more minutes. We'll be
Sorry,
back
everyone.
at 3 o'clock, hopefully, with mics. All right, and we are back. And I was able to control my own mic, so I think it's working now. Superintendent Hyde, I will turn it back over to you.
I believe Dr. Allen was speaking at the time, so Dr. Allen, I'll unmute your mic if you want to go ahead and ask your question again.
Thank you. Actually, my question was addressed during the break, but I think in general, as it related to that, is thinking about our device implementation, just moving forward, and how we've done with that. So just as a report later down the road, as it relates to internet safety.
Yes, sir. Seeing no further questions or comments, thank you, Ms. Dodge. Next item, I'd like to bring Steve Cochran forward, Senior Director for Career Pathways. I'm not sure if you're being joined by Mr. Gambrell or Ms. White. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Watching on.
This is more informational for the board. This is really all just good news. As you can see here, we've been very fortunate this year to have received multiple grants. And this is kind of setting the stage for Ms. Everett and our larger grant announcement in a few moments. But Steve, go ahead.
Good afternoon. Today I'm just going to do a very short presentation on the workforce education grants. First, we'll start off, and I do want to say these grants are non-competitive and they are repeating. These are grants that we receive every year. They come in various amounts. Depending on, of course, how the economy is doing at the time. So our secondary Perkins grant, we were awarded almost $1.5 million this year. The beneficiaries are our local high schools and middle schools. This money is used to, the majority of this money is used to provide training, new equipment for students. Also, a lot of this money is set aside so that students can participate in career and technical education clubs, and they benefit from that, going on their national trips. We fund those activities. We also fund positions out of this money. Some new positions this year that we're funding is a senior coordinator that will be responsible for internships and work-based learning. We have another senior coordinator that will be responsible for grants, not just these grants, but also writing competitive grants. Although that position has not yet been created, the person that may be applying for that position has already written a competitive grant for us this year, and it is the dual enrollment grant and has earned us close to $600,000. And that money has provided opportunities for students at Kathleen, Summerlin Academy. It's expanded dual enrollment opportunities for our high school students at our technical colleges and at George Jenkins. And it's not moving. Is it moving up there? No?
Let's see if I can.
It appears to be frozen.
Where would you like to be, sir?
That's perfect, I think. Was there anything after the secondary Perkins other than this?
No,
okay, good. All right, the Rural Perkins Grant, the beneficiary are our rural schools. Frostproof, Dundee, Fort Meade all benefit from the Rural Perkins Grant. That money goes strictly to those schools. The amount of award is $25,000. Post-secondary Perkins, this benefits our Travis and Ridge Technical Colleges. We were awarded $227,000 this year. That money, again, goes to support new equipment and also is used to benefit the adults that participate in their career and technical education clubs across the county. Our AGE grant, the Adult Education and Family Literacy, a general education grant. The amount of award was $1,357,000. The beneficiaries, it says that it's the adult schools and our GED, IET, and ESOL programs, but the benefits are our students our adult students across the county. We do have 2 new positions created out of that this year, which is a testing coordinator. And the purpose of that position is to coordinate testing at both of the adult schools, which are now at the technical colleges. Additionally, they will oversee the testing for the technical colleges also. The other position, testing proctor, is someone that is necessary to have when you are conducting the testing, so that it may be done in a safe fashion. Civics grant, $211,000 awarded to Polk County Schools. The benefits of these are ESOL students, are students that are learning English as a second language. The corrections grant, $100,000 this year. The beneficiary of this grant is our students that are currently incarcerated but being educated by teachers from East Area Adults.
Mr. Cochran, as board members potentially sign up for conversation or questions, would you mind briefly, are these larger awards than we've received previously or commensurate with what we've received previously?
The grants are slightly up this year. Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, sir. I'm not seeing any questions coming in from the board, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is the Magnet School Assistance Grant. Board members, as you recall, we were very fortunate, very excited to be receiving this grant. Total award from this grant is just under $15 million. It's a huge award. It's a huge opportunity for us to continue to impact and provide high rigor and great programs across our school district and address multiple issues at least 5 schools. Ms. Everett, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Good evening or good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you again. So as Mr. Hyde mentioned, we were awarded the MSAPA grant, the 2022 MSAPA grant, and it is a 5-year grant valued at just under $15 million. It is a highly competitive grant. We were lucky to receive it along with there were a total of 19 grantees, so we were super excited to receive it. And it really sets up a long tradition that's been here for a long time by my predecessors, right? Brian Warren, Carolyn Bridges, they've done such an amazing job. And I will kind of give kudos to them as well as to Candy Amato and Miana Lockhart, who were instrumental in this application. And one of the things in talking with the DOE project director when we were working out different pieces of the grant and those final stages of evaluation was the fact that the DOE really likes Polk County. They have been super impressed by the work that's been done here, the success that we've had with these grants, and so they worked really hard to support this application. And so that is a tribute to them 100%. So in this particular grant award, there are several different purposes for this grant, and it won't progress for me, but you do have the presentation as well. And so the first piece of it is to add 3 new magnet grants to Polk County, and that would be Garner Elementary Academy, which is going to have a STEM Polytech focus, and those students, when they leave Garner, will do a straight feeder into Polytech, Lake Alfred Polytech Academy, and continue that STEM education. Rosabelle Blake is a K-8. It will create a Cambridge primary and lower Cambridge program for those students, and then ideally they will feed into Tenoroc's Cambridge program should the students choose to do that. And then we also have Stevens Elementary Academy, which will be converted into an International Baccalaureate Primary Years program, and those students will direct feed into Union Academy and hopefully choose International Baccalaureate at Bartow High School. And then we have 2 revisionary pieces of that. So Bethune Academy is going to be revised and is going to also become a primary Cambridge Academy, and then Daniel Jenkins will be revised into a Cambridge lower secondary program with Bethune feeding into Daniel Jenkins. Oh, there we go. And then we also have 2 other basic purposes in the grant. One is to revise the magnet enrollment selection process, to work with consultants and update that process based on our different demographics from the previous census. It's a pretty involved process. It will mirror what we've done before, but with updated information to go into that programming. And then a creation of seamless feeder programs that I just spoke to a moment ago with the new actual magnet schools. And then along with the grant are approved positions that will be funded entirely by the grant. And you can see those on the last page of the PowerPoint that will catch up here in a minute. The first one is a director of magnet schools, and it will be a new position to the department. A curriculum specialist of accelerated programs. That one is a little bit different than what we've done in the past, but the idea behind that is to ensure that all of the curriculum initiatives that occur in this office under the MSAP grant are tightly aligned to all the curriculum initiatives happening in K-12 teaching and learning. We want to make sure that we are hand in hand in everything that we do in lockstep for all of the different schools. There's also an 11-month TRST position, a senior coordinator position to help with the evaluation pieces of the grant. As you know, we have to often report back to the federal government and all the different evaluation and reporting pieces, and so that position will live primarily in Sandy Riley Hawkins' department to help support the evaluation and reporting that is required. And then lastly, an upgrade to our student assignment specialist. She will become a supervisor of student assignment. We're adding a great deal of work on top of her as she takes on the revision piece to the lottery process. And so we're upgrading that position to be commensurate with the additional duties that she's going to be undertaking. And then lastly, the school-based positions. Each of the 5 schools will receive one 11-month TRST position to support the curriculum initiatives. With the exception of Blake Academy, they will receive 2, one to support their elementary program and one to support their middle school program. And then each school will also receive a budgetary technician to help with the purchasing and the financing and the procurement and different pieces that support this grant. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions.
Ms. Cunningham?
Thank you, sir. In looking at the 2 in the northeast section of the county, Bethune Academy and Daniel Jenkins, I noticed that we have primary and a secondary Cambridge programs going in. Obviously, we're going to want to do something to provide a high school Cambridge for these children to matriculate to. I know we talked about it briefly originally. Has there been any further thought as to where that might lie?
Not at this time. So once we get those kind of off the ground and running, right now they would go to Tenoroc. But as those conversations evolve, they do zone to Cambridge. You're looking at me, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure they go. I'm sorry, Winter Haven. I'm sorry, I totally missaid that. Winter Haven.
Not Tenoroc. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Go to Winter Haven. So, but as those conversations evolve, I'm sure that will come back to the table about an additional program.
Yeah, because once again, that would be
a distance.
Taking children and asking them to leave their community to go. So I think in light of some of the discussions this morning, and you may not have been here for that, it's really important to keep kids in their community. So I would love to see the Cambridge program, move into one of the high schools in the area in order that those kids could matriculate appropriately, just like we do with the IB.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much.
Ms. Miller?
Looking at the grant-funded positions, have we discussed having a position to work specifically with magnet programs to for students who need support services? Because I've gotten a few phone calls, mainly from staff, where I'm glad that we're being more inclusive in our magnet settings, but without the right support, it's not going to be successful. And so having children who may be dually diagnosed or just having children with different support needs, is there someone in this office that deals with that directly, or is it a position with the ESE department that you're trying to collaborate with?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm so glad you brought that up because we really have increased the enrollment of special populations into the magnet schools, both ELL students and students with disabilities. And so we've had conversations, I've had conversations with Tammy Castles about what that support needs to look like and how we serve students where they're at, right, versus closing the door to those students. Let's invite them in, but we need to provide those services. So we don't currently have a position in our office that supports that piece, but Tammy and I have really been talking about how do we ensure on enrollment those supports are there, but then that they're carried out actually through the curriculum pieces and the support pieces as well. We just haven't actually nailed down exactly what that looks like yet, but it is an ongoing conversation for sure.
Yeah, I think the board would be interested in hearing that when
Okay.
you find out the resolution.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Chair Wyatt.
Thank you. My first question was going to be very similar to Ms. Cunningham's because there is not a ton, even with rezoning those students to McLaughlin, there's not a ton of room at Winter Haven if those students choose to go there. So I'm hopeful that by the time those students get to high school, that there'll be an option in the Northeast for the continuity, and that we'll also look at additional opportunities in middle and elementary schools in the Winter Haven area for students that are already going to Winter Haven High School where that program exists. I know Denison had a pre-Cambridge, and we're trying to build that back up, but.
Absolutely. And Winter Haven, you know, they just don't have enough seats for the demand.
Right.
So the one great thing is we know we have the demand to meet an additional program should that be able to happen. And so that's an ongoing conversation as well. And with Gina Williams, you know, how do we expand that program? How do we support that program in a way that we are looking at how do we get other kids there, not just the top of the top on assessment, but how do we look at some other criteria to make sure that we're opening the door for students who have that interest, widening the door, if you will.
Yes, thank you. My second point was going to be, and I know Superintendent Hyde was super grinny and excited when I met with him last Monday, but we were number 2 in the state for this grant in dollar amount for the award, behind Miami-Dade, I think is what he said.
Actually, I thought we were just above Miami-Dade.
We did. We were second. We received the second highest allocation. And I may have misspoke. It was Miami-Dade and
Broward.
We received the second highest allocation. Either way, considering the enrollment, we're happy to have gotten more money than one of them, so.
Yes.
And we're
So-
chasing the other.
It was impressive to have more money per student, for sure.
Yes, so I just wanted to highlight that and what a great job this team did on that application and making sure that it was all together.
Credit to Candy and Miana who made that work. Absolutely.
And sorry, one more question, because I know it came up in the beginning. I know in making these magnets, one of the things that we get a lot of pushback on is we don't have many zoned schools left. So I just want to make sure that we're still, one of the promises that had been made to Garner was making sure that we keep that Florence Villa community whole, because they're currently zoned to 7 schools, one of which is Garner. So I just want to make sure that we're keeping up with that and that is part of the.
Yes, absolutely. And I met with the folks out of Angela Usher's office that kind of works with that boundary zone, kind of talked a lot about that. And part of it's going to be on us to really make sure that we recruit those families into Garner as the magnet, right? And kind of keep them all and provide seats for those students to go there as well.
And they'll have some sort of priority with that, is that?
Yeah, so all current students, our goal really is to hit between 95, 96 of current enrollment into the magnet.
I mean, more so 10 years from now when none of the current students are there, that neighborhood, I believe that was the agreement before, was that neighborhood would still have some sort of priority. So if we can make sure that that's still on our radar, because I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle, because we don't have many zoned schools left in Winter Haven anymore. So, thank you.
And just because another board member had raised a question there, Mr. Pitts, Ms. Everett, Ms. Amato, and others are already scheduling multiple meetings to finalize the communication strategy, the implementation timeline, so all of that can be conveyed and communicated to not only staff, but to students and families in an appropriate timeline. And that involves, you know, again, as you saw, there are a number of positions that we'll be bringing back to the district that were previously funded from similar grants. And I'm excited that the team was able to be competitive this term and bring this grant back to Polk County Public Schools. They did an amazing job. $15 million is nothing to sneeze at. And what an impact it's going to have on our schools and our students and our communities. So thank you to everyone, and they did an incredible job. They really did. Mr. Bridges was on the phone with the department, with the federal government, as they were conducting their review. Ms. Everett, Ms. Amato, Mr. Pitts, and others, just continuing the dialogue, and very pleased that we were able to see progression with this. So congratulations, because what a huge opportunity you brought to Polk County. So thank you.
And we hit the ground running. I think you're aware, but just in case, literally the award notice came out September 30th for an October 1st start date. Like there was no time to lose, and we have not rested. So we are absolutely working on it.
Oh, I apologize, Ms. Fields.
Okay, so I have never seen such an aggressive expected result statement on the budget analysis sheet. It says a reduction in minority group isolation in 3 magnet schools and or their respective feeders, prevention of further minority group isolation in 2 magnet schools, which I think all that is great and relevant. And I don't expect to have an answer today, but if I could at least see some of the strategies that you all have in place to ensure that that comes to pass, that would be great.
Absolutely. And just so you know, that comes word for word from the grant application itself. This is the actual objective of the grant. And so those strategies are written in the grant as well, but they will be refined and fleshed out as we go along. I will say the actual grant application itself is well over 1,000 pages. It's, 2 4-inch binders. And so most of it is already sitting in the office with Ms. Vega, and then all the attachments and the different charts and things like that are also being printed as we speak. And so that document does live in your office as well. So you're welcome to look at it anytime, but I will absolutely provide updates as we move.
Well, if you can just reference some of the specific strategies, I mean, I don't need to see all of them. But one of the things that I've spoken to the superintendent about continuously is about diversity and making sure that there's equity. And so I'm pleased to see this as a part of the grant.
Let me just kind of do an executive summary and kind of show you where those pieces are and kind of pull excerpts for that.
That'd be great.
Ms. Everett, you can email the board in its entirety, just copy myself and the deputy superintendent. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I apologize. Chair Wyatt.
Thank you, and I apologize. I had one more question, and then I forgot it. But so for each of the schools individually, as community members are wondering what exactly it's going to look like for their school, are there going to be individual, this is what's happening for Garner, this is what's happening for Blake, that we can push out to the
Many parent
community?
meetings, many flyers, yeah, all that stuff is in development as we speak. And part of that is really getting these team members on board so that we can spread those team members out and make sure that we are doing due diligence at each of those schools and communicating that effectively, recruitment, all of those different pieces. Absolutely.
And I think just at least for the school in my district, I know it'd be very helpful to have that information before it gets pushed out in the masses, because I'm already getting questions as to what does this mean for Garner, and I know it's all in the grant, but as far as rollout and timeline and things like that, that would be helpful.
That's what I referenced a few moments ago, that Mr. Pitts is meeting with the team to finalize those timelines, and then we'll provide that information to you before it becomes public. So you'll have all that.
Thank you.
Okay. I see no further questions or comments, Ms. Everett.
Thank you.
The next item before the board is the last item on the superintendent's report. I'll bring Mr. Andrew Baldwin, Senior Director of Federal Programs and Grants Management, forward. This is a gentleman who has frequently been before the board and has done an absolute amazing job helping us manage multiple grants, very large grants. This is a grant opportunity that we became aware of, I became aware of through my colleagues. There are 2 aspects to this. One is for the SEA, the state level can apply for this grant in mental health supports, but so can the LEA, the Local Education Authority or agency, and that would be Polk County. So I forwarded the grant to Mr. Baldwin and to multiple other partners who we've been having ongoing conversations with. So as an example, Polk Vision has adopted mental health as one of their priorities for the county. The Sheriff's Office has also prioritized mental health and mental health supports as a priority. The Health Department has partnered with all of us to look at mental health supports community-wide. And so this was a great opportunity to pull all of those entities to the table for us to have a conversation. So in accordance with school board policy and procedures, in order for us, the timeline for us to apply and all of that is a very tight one. And so Mr. Baldwin's here today on behalf of my office and this district to basically get permission from the school board to apply for a competitive grant. And I just tried to summarize it as best I could. But this grant will allow us to enhance and expand the level of services we provide at the school level. I know this has been an issue that many of you have raised as far as how do we get more mental health counselors on our campuses. I know Ms. Miller, this is a significant concern of hers and has been for some time. But that's a reality, and that's why we looked at our staffing allocation model. One of the barriers to adding mental health staff is the limited number of available staff with the appropriate certifications and/or endorsements. What this grant also allows us to address is creating a pipeline for those individuals. So we've brought some of our colleges and universities to the table to begin the discussion. To to begin a discussion about what that might look like so that we can simultaneously add staff to schools to provide supports for students, while at the same time, we're actually recruiting students, current students, to apply to local colleges and universities to earn their degree in these areas and then subsequently come back to work for the school district. So it's a multi-tiered approach to how do we best address this, both in the short term and a long-term solution. So, Mr. Baldwin, I'm sorry if I stole all your thunder, but go right ahead, sir.
You did a great job summarizing it.
Thank you.
The official purpose of the grant is to increase the number of credentialed mental health service providers that are providing school-based mental health services to students. In Polk County, those credentialed staff positions are school psychologists, school counselors, mental health facilitators, and school social workers. So those are the types of positions we'll be targeting with this grant. The project period, the applications are due on November the 3rd, so that's why we are having a tight turnaround time for you guys to give us approval, and I think this item is going back to back and is on the consent agenda for this evening so that we can get your official approval to proceed. Awardees will be notified of the awards the next month in December 2022 with an anticipated start date that next month in January. So again, a very tight turnaround time for the federal government. We'll see if they actually live up to those time periods. We're hopeful of that. But this will be a 5-year grant, meaning that we'll have up to 60 months to hire the personnel and to support the personnel in those positions. According to the grant documents, the average award size for this grant is about $1.75 million. And that's a large amount of money, but when we're looking at staff and positions over a 5-year period, it does limit the number of types of positions and the number of positions we can add through this grant. But because we are a larger than average district, we are going to have a larger than average ask for the grant, and I've got a budget summary I can show you. The grant does have 3 main priority areas that Mr. Hyde has already identified. One area is recruitment of staff. So our plan is to hire 5 additional mental health counselors to serve at high-need secondary schools over the 5-year grant period. We'd love to be able to hire additional, get 20 mental health staff, but we just don't think that our grant would be competitive if we're asking for too much money. We want something that's going to be fundable and able to be identified and for the reviewers to say, yes, we can fund that and still have money for other districts as well. So we're looking to initially hire 1 mental health person and then each year add an additional unit until the 5th year when we have 5 units. That will also help us in our efforts to be able to demonstrate that we can sustain this effort, because at the end of the 5-year period, we would need to absorb those units with our own mental health allocation or other local or state funding, or possibly even leverage in federal funding to assist. But we do want to make sure that this is a long-term effort and not just a short 5-year period that we're addressing these issues. The next area is retention of our current staff. We want to make sure that we are holding on to the staff that we have. So we are proposing to have flat rate retention stipends for our school-based mental health staff. The third area is respecialization. So in the grant, respecialization means that we currently have staff that are certified in one area. For example, we may have certified teachers that have an interest in becoming a mental health service provider. So we would look at partnering with the university to provide a cohort for those people that are interested in doing that to earn a master's degree in counseling or possibly even a PhD in school psychology. So we would have to limit the numbers that participate in those cohorts to make it feasible within the grant budget. But then we would also look to support those people after they've committed or after they've completed their programs with paid internships for the candidates that have completed those programs so that we can get them done with their internships and into our schools and providing services to our students. The overall budget estimate for our grant is for the program and the services alone is about $2.7 million. If you recall, the average award was 1.7, but I think due to our size, I think we can probably ask for a little bit more than the average. So we're going to go for 2.7, an additional $300,000 in indirect administrative costs. So that gives the total program cost with the direct services and indirect admin at around $3.1 million. This grant does require that the district provide a 25% match of local or state funding. So the district would be committed to spending over the 5-year period around $781,000, but that can be used through the mental health allocation or any combination of local and state funding that we can utilize to offset that 25%. So that's all I have for you guys. We're happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Chair Wyatt. Chair Wyatt.
I believe I was still up from the last time.
Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you. So my question is, of the 3.1 million, that's the allocation that you're applying for this grant for the 5-year period. And my question is, that 3.1 million would be divided by 5 then? So we would get that proportion every year for 5 years, not 3.1. 3.1 is the total?
Yes, ma'am. 3.1 is the total amount.
Okay, and then the 25% match, is that expected annually, or does that go up or down, or how does it work over the 5-year period?
We would have to determine in our budget which specific items we would want the district to provide as the match. And then we could identify whether those are second year or third year expenses. So the district wouldn't necessarily have to commit to that $780,000 divided by 5 and commit that each year. But we would, over the course of the grant, need to commit the full 25%.
Full 25%.
But that could come in the form, as we have with our reading program and our masters in ed leadership partnerships with various universities.
Right.
One example of this would be if we had employees who were close to approaching or could readily earn this certification, one of our 25% match could be the tuition reimbursement that we would provide or tuition payments that we would make to move those staff into the appropriate areas. Other costs that we would have are for trainings or other opportunities. So that cost does come, but it does ultimately benefit the district. Part of these costs could easily be offset by Title I mental health allocation and/or other allocations. As you know, we've had we've had a contract with Invo Healthcare to provide supports, and we are continuing to explore. This year, we will do an analysis to determine if there's been any effect size of late, and if not, we'll return those funding may come back to the district, which would easily offset this cost. So the funding is there, and the cost could be paid off in a variety of ways.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I appreciate the update on this, and sounds like a great vision. I was curious how many students, possibly, or not students, well, I guess maybe, as they would pursue their master's program, in regards to that cohort size, what are you thinking?
Right now, with our budget projections, 5 in each of the cohorts, so 5 for the masters for counseling and 5 for the school psychologist.
Okay. And do you have those higher ed institutions targeted at this point?
We don't have a solid partnership developed yet. We know that there are just a few universities that have both of those programs, so it'll probably limit the universities which we'll be able to target.
All right, good deal. And the average time on a program, MA program, is it MA or MS or 2 years? So
I believe it's an MS.
It's an MS, yeah.
But I'm curious as to the +1 aspect. So for some of our employees who currently have their bachelor's, may have the appropriate number of, they may have relevant coursework that they've already completed, so it would require a transcript review. So that really could be a +1 conversation with a college university. Would they take a cohort of students in? And basically, to simplify for everybody else, if they have the right number of coursework that they took previously, it could be applicable towards their master's level. And that would shorten the period of time in which they would have to complete additional coursework. But we'd have to do that on a case-by-case basis. One of the things, too, is that should we be awarded this, one of the things I will do is come back to the board and ask for a match. That rather than just limit it to this handful, let's let the state and feds pay for 50% of the cost of this program. Let's go ahead and invest the other 50%, because I think we all acknowledge the need is there. But I would show offsetting costs, so there would be no additional impact to our budget. We would just simply reallocate existing funds from existing programs that we may determine are not yielding results that we had anticipated or had hoped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate the vision and the opportunity to invest in our staff as well. So appreciate it.
Ms. Fields?
I think this is a great opportunity. I guess the only question that I have is due next week. Is it Wednesday? Yes, ma'am. So you all have the capacity and everything in place to be able to do this?
Yes, we will have the grant application ready to go. The only thing that we will probably not have solidified by then is the formal partnership with the university, but we'll budget sufficiently to be able to cover, different options of which university to choose. And then I anticipate that the cohort with the university probably wouldn't start until the probably either the summer or the fall term next year. But we would try to fill that first mental health service or mental health counselor position as soon as possible once we find out that we have the award.
Good luck to you.
It was a fast turnaround. The announcement wasn't even made until October 18th, was when the formal application was released and the information was made available. So it is a very fast turnaround on this grant. But again, amazing team. So once I emailed them, Mr. Baldwin pulled everybody together for a meeting. We met, we were all in agreement. We will get some incredible letters of support from our various partners who all have a shared interest in this. It also aligns well with the First Lady's initiatives with mental health and mental health support. So I think we'll get a lot of support from the Florida legislature as well in this regard. So it's a great opportunity for us. And you know, most people will look at it and say, you know, it's $3 million and it's over multiple years, but it's $3 million. We'll take it. Anything we can do to invest in our kids and get additional positions in front of them, we need to seize that opportunity. And that's the one thing I hope that people are noticing throughout the last, you know, and I would say even before I arrived here, we are focusing heavily on, we realize we have limited revenue, so how do we maximize our efficiencies? Well, part of that is applying for competitive grants such as this. And I think we've established a really strong pattern of success as a school district in doing so. So I see no further questions. Couple things, just work session announcement. So if I may take this moment, Madam Chair, members of the board, each year for the past few years, we've tried to build a new practice here. And so pumpkin decorating contest is something that's become very, very intentional and very well received. So we want to take a moment to, if I may, to thank Miss Rebecca Ekman, principal at Floral Avenue, who brought their fifth graders down last week on a walking field trip to the office to judge the pumpkins. The students were excited and they talked about how difficult of a decision it was to make. There were a total of 21 pumpkin entries, and you can see the pumpkins on all of our social media sites. Again, a huge shout out to the students and teachers from Floral Avenue Elementary, Mr. French, Miss Smith, Miss Townsend, and Mr. Town. At this time, it's my pleasure to share that the winner, it's not really my pleasure, because this is very competitive. I never realized that starting something like this to create more spirit for the holidays and unity and collegiality would become this competitive. But I will say congratulations to the Public Relations and Strategic Partnerships Department. Their pumpkin was selected by the students, and it was a theme of Among Us. Among Us is a game that students, I see all the people nodding their heads. So all very popular. That was the district winner this year, and congratulations to them. So, Madam Chair, that completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. I have a few things to go over, and we'll quickly go over the information items. Are there any questions on the information items? Donation report, quarterly report? Seeing none. And next we will go through the board meeting agenda. Please hold, let me pull it up. All right, any questions on tonight's agenda for special recognitions? I think Yvette sent out a very detailed email with who was doing what. And then approval of minutes. Any questions on the minutes? Sections F through I. Sections J through L. Sections M through P. Section Q, our action agenda. Ms. Miller?
Are you going to have someone here read or address the naming of the athletic field? Or do you want me to?
Superintendent Hyde, will we have anyone here for Lake Gibson?
I'm not aware that we will, but I will verify that during the break.
Just let me know if you need for me to read that.
Thank you. And likely, I'll just have you read the letter of support in the discussion, if that's okay. Any other questions on action agenda Q? Seeing none. Public hearing on policy updates. Any questions? Dr. Wilson? Sorry. So many name changes.
Same question about Frost Roof, naming of fine arts. I mean, I'm happy to.
For the action agenda, yes. We'll have, we don't have anyone here from Frost Proof, or we will have? I believe they said last week that he would be here, but we'll find out on the break. But if you would again read that, I believe there's a document in there. So we'll look at it at the break, Dr. Wilson. All right. Ms. Miller? Public hearing, section R, any questions? Superintendent Hyde, you will have a report. Attorney, we have 2 items on the attorney's report. Any questions for those? And then we'll have board member reports and public comments. Anything I missed? Any questions on the agenda?
Madam Chair, I would like to announce, I'll need to have a brief attorney-client session at the next work session, and I have to announce that at the public meeting, so I'll do that right now. And we'll do the publication in the newspaper, but we've got a couple of cases that I need your advice on.
Perfect, thank you. All right.
Madam Chair, not on the agenda, but I have to apologize. One item was misplaced on the original agenda from the workshop. So Captain Seymour will have to come forward and do a brief presentation on the Safe Schools report as required by Florida statute. So Captain Seymour, if you would.
Before she goes. Good afternoon. So as you know, I'm Captain Jill Seymour, Polk County Sheriff's Office. I'm your Director of Safe Schools, and I'm here to speak about the major accomplishments and programs from the Office of Safe Schools facilitated during the 21-22 school year. As you know, Mike Wiggins retired in June, and I was named the District Safety Specialist and attended the week-long state training. I now oversee all aspects of the school safety and security, and I just want to say I could not do it without an amazing team with all of my supervisors. The information contained in the district best practices assessment and school security risk assessments are confidential and not open to public record. At this time, I will give you a brief summary of both of those reports as required by the state statute. The objective of the district best practices assessment is to demonstrate to the board that school security risk assessments were completed at each school campus by October 1st, which is requirement by state statute. My summary will address the efforts of Polk County Public Schools as it relates to compliance with the Marjorie Stoneman Public High School Safety Act, its commission, and best practices related to school safety and security. Furthermore, my summary will identify strategies and activities that we have implemented to ensure that we are improving school safety and security and progressing in that area. Some positive school measures that we have in place. There are safe school officers at every campus. We are 100% complete on perimeter fencing. We conducted all emergency drills required by state statute last year. We promoted the Fortify Florida app as required by state statute. We had the panic alert system implemented and tested to comply with the 911 standards and communicating with the Peace app. Our digital intercom system has been installed at all schools. The state requires that every member of the threat assessment team be, it's called CSTAG, and it's the Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines. They have to all be trained in the CSTAG model. And over the summer, we completed that training, and I'll get into it more, but a threat assessment team, every school has to have 3 or 4 members on this team, and every member has to have the training. So it was a big accomplishment to get completed over the summer because they had to have it done by August 1st. Installation of room numbering systems on the exterior of classroom windows was completed. Automatic door locking systems are being installed on all classroom doors. We continue to educate students and parents on social media and the consequences that come from posting or making threats.
Based on the results of the school security risk assessments, there are additional steps that should be considered. We need to continue to train personnel in youth mental health first aid. The state requirement is that at least 80% of our staff be trained, and I think the deadline is by August 1st, 2023. At this time, we only have 15% trained, so we're working on how we're going to implement training for all school staff to be trained in first aid for youth mental health. We need to consider first aid, stop the bleed training for all school-based personnel. We need to continue our physical improvements with single point access. We have an ongoing camera upgrade occurring at each of our campuses, and it is recommended that we continue with that upgrade. We need to create a maintenance plan for our technology that we are upgrading, such as our cameras and our emergency mass notification systems. The installation of impact-resistant and one-way window film at the schools is recommended. The installation of radio, Wi-Fi, and cell phone signal amplifiers at schools experiencing outages and difficulty with reception at some locations is recommended, and the installation of fixed panic alarms. Based on our assessment, those are some of the steps that we should consider to continue or initiate as we go forward with our safety and security measures in our schools. I'm missing my first page. So I went to sorry. I don't know where my first page went. So positive measures in place. This is coming, I'm going through the annual report that you received in the binder. That's what we're going to go through now for the 2021 school year. There are positive measures in place, and additional considerations was from that's as my position from the Director of Safe Schools and the, what all programs we have in place. I've provided you with a complete report for you to review in full at your convenience. I'm just going to hit some highlights. Please remember that information related to the report is confidential and should not be copied or shared. Please turn to page 4 in the handouts. Gaggle monitoring is designed to monitor school-based drives, files, and documents that are accessible by students in an effort to detect early safety concerns. During the 21-22 school year, we responded to 69 Gaggle reports. Of the 69 reports, there were 6 students that were Baker acted. And that number is down. Last year, we responded to 149 reports from Gaggle, and there were 26 Baker acts, and that was the COVID year. AFSAC requires a campus tour by local first responding agencies. This tour provides first responders the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the campus and provide assistance in planning for a major incident. A comprehensive list of law enforcement and fire contacts were provided to all schools by the Office of Safe Schools. All schools completed their campus tour and were able to submit their school security risk assessments on time this year. On page 5, in athletics, countywide football game security is determined by the Director of Safe Schools and the County Athletic Director to create a process that determines security staffing needed for each home game to provide adequate safety and security. On page 6, each school year, the Office of Safe Schools conducts unannounced lockdown drills at over 30 pre-selected schools in order to assess emergency readiness and offer guidance in areas of deficiency. I just want to explain that process a little bit and talk about the forms that you received. My entire supervision goes to the school, so there's 2 lieutenants, 3 sergeants, and myself, and sometimes we bring grip deputies, and we spread out on the campus, like we pick different sections of the campus. We take a map and assign locations while I stay in the front office with the staff. And once they get spread out on the campus, then we initiate a lockdown of the school, and they evaluate their section of the campus, and then we all meet back up. So we try and keep those lockdown drills to under a minute. We don't want to interrupt the process for too long, so that's why we spread out before we do the lockdown drill. And then we come back together, and we have those checklists. The one that says Safe Schools Division, that's the one that I use with my team when I go out. The other form we created this summer because Florida State statute, Marjorie Stoneman stated and put it in legislation that local law enforcement agencies will respond and be involved in drills at schools. So I didn't want deputies and officers on the road to come to the school and not know what they should be looking for. So we created this form so they know what they're looking for and the questions to ask. So every time, somebody from the road comes to the school and participates in the drill, they fill out that form and then it gets sent to my office so we can make sure that they know what they're doing and the school is doing what they're supposed to be doing. As a result of Alyssa's law that required Florida school districts to implement a panic button on all campuses, the district partnered with Raptor Technologies. Drill management is conducted through Raptor and offers school administrators a tool to schedule, conduct, and document various types of drills. Raptor also offers document storage that houses our critical incident response plan for all staff members to easily access from their desktop or phones. Links to training videos such as Run, Hide, Fight, Hard Corners, See Something, Say Something, This Is No Joke, and Don't Make Posts Involving Threats or Guns. And there's also a digital intercom system tutorial video that's placed on there that they can have access to through Raptor. During the 21-22 school year, we acquired Raptor as a tool to facilitate a reunification that guides our reunification team through the process and accounts for students. The Office of Safe Schools is responsible for the reunification response team, and it's comprised of over 100 district employees and its activation and deployment. Last school year, we conducted 2 training exercises, one with paper and pencil, and the other with the guidance of Raptor representatives, where we simulated a true reunification. All members of the response team are on School Messenger, and they will receive a phone call, text, and email with notification of where to respond if and when we ever need to activate the reunification team. On page 7, Fortify Florida, it's a statewide reporting tool operated by the Department of Law Enforcement that allows students and the general public to report concerning activity instantly to law enforcement agencies and school officials. Like Crime Stoppers, the information can be submitted anonymously. Office of Safe Schools constantly monitors Fortify Florida tips pertaining to Polk County schools and ensures law enforcement and school officials respond accordingly. During the 21-22 school year, the Office of Safe Schools addressed 28 Fortify Florida tips. We continue to partner with Heartland Crime Stoppers as well for anonymous reporting of threats and suspicious incidents and criminal activity within the schools. We also have displayed, if you see something, say something, signage in all the public schools and on the license plates on school buses. During the 21-22 school year, we addressed 6 Crime Stopper tips, and the benefit to reporting information through Crime Stoppers instead of Fortify Florida is that you're eligible for a cash reward. So we try and promote that more in the schools using Heartland for Crime Stoppers so they can get some cash for their tips. On page 9, this section discusses the training and communication between the Office of Safe Schools and 8 municipal agencies that Polk County Public Schools contracts with. Every year, the Office of Safe Schools hosts an annual training that discusses updates to procedures as well as new mandates from the state. On page 10, Teen Court is a juvenile diversion program based on the philosophy that juvenile offenders are less likely to reoffend when punishment is decided by a jury of their peers. The 10th Judicial Circuit provides this program for juvenile offenders who commit crimes, admit their guilt, and consent to participate in the program. Student volunteers have trained to perform the roles of defense attorney, prosecutor, clerk, and bailiff. The role of judiciary is performed by an actual judge or attorney magistrate. Volunteers develop strong leadership skills, receive community service hours, and gain a working knowledge of their local government. This diversion allows juvenile offenders to bypass traditional court processes, thereby eliminating their criminal record. Pages 11 through 13. PCSO Explorer Post is a chartered and sanctioned program through the Boy Scouts of America. 15 full-time deputies from the School Resource Unit volunteer and are active as advisors for the Explorer Post. Extra education and after-school activities with each student provides a stronger community relationship and changes the lives of these students that cannot be measured. Last school year, we had 3 Explorers graduate from the Law Enforcement Academy and are now Polk County Sheriff's Office deputies. And we have 2 more that have been sponsored by Sheriff's Office, and they're starting their law enforcement career at the next academy. During the 21-22 school year, we had 728 volunteer hours that were accomplished over several community events. One major event that the Explorers participate in is Operation Pop Top. This utilizes an explorer to combat the illegal sale of alcohol to minors. Explorers work with deputies to conduct weekly checks at local convenience stores. During the 21-22 school year, we had 40 operations conducted where 325 stores were checked for compliance. Of the 325 stores, 22 violations were found, with arrests being made. On page 14, school crossing guards received 2 hours of state-structured classroom instruction with an additional 2 days of on-the-job training in accordance with the Ramon Turnquest Act. Additionally, school crossing guards receive an annual 2-hour recertification at the beginning of each new school year. Currently, there are 145 staffed crossings throughout the county with a total of 177 guards providing service for an estimated 24,000 students per month. On page 15, all school resource deputies undergo a formal training program within the school resource unit. The training includes policies, procedures, and all aspects of doing the job of a school resource deputy. All SRDs and SROs have attended crisis intervention training, the CSTAG training, and the youth mental health first aid training. All middle school SROs and SRDs instruct the Substance Abuse and Violence Education Program or a similar program. These programs are designed to teach students how they can resist the influences of substance abuse, avoid violent situations, build coping skills, and recognize and react to online dangers, just to name a few. Guardians, who are located at all elementary, adult schools, and technical colleges, have received the youth mental health first aid training as well. Pages 16 through 22 is our gang resistance intervention program. This unit implements innovative juvenile crime prevention and intervention efforts by providing a gateway towards successful academic and career opportunities in order to divert at-risk or gang-affiliated youth. The goals of GRIP include a progressive restorative approach involving 4 key elements. The first one is harm caused by delinquent behavior and gang affiliation. Next is the needs of the at-risk youth. Next is the needs of the community and potential victims involved. And the last one is the obligations of the at-risk youth in regards to their previous actions. During the 21-22 school year, GRIP met with gang members or associates 93 times and met with at-risk youth over 570 times. As a result of GRIP interactions, there were 17 student interventions that resulted in comprehensive positive behavior reversals. GRIP sanctions are a modification of probation conditions. A judge can implement GRIP sanctions to include any of the listed requirements on pages 17 and 18. Office of Safe Schools established a partnership with the Florida Department of Children and Families to address students who may be considered at risk and created a process for what is called a staffing for a student. The staffing is designed to bring the student and his or her guardian together with the appropriate stakeholders to discuss the best approach moving forward to quickly address the student's needs and place them in the best position possible to be successful. On 19 through 21 are your GRIP success stories that you guys love. Currently, the GRIP unit are closely monitoring 157 at-risk youth. Different types of monitoring are classified as gang members or associates, risk protection order respondents, GRIP sanctions, general at-risk, or it can also be a combination of any of the above. Monitoring and mentoring involves frequently visiting each at-risk youth at their school and at home. These contacts ensure the youth is attending classes, they check their grades, and checking with school administration on their behavior. During the regular interactions, GRIP deputies praise the at-risk youth on their accomplishments and discuss goals and their future. Page 22 is some statistical data of GRIP contacts. Pages 23 through 26 is Marjorie Stoneman. Douglas Act, several issues related to school safety and security and school violence that provide law enforcement, courts, and the schools with the tools to enhance public safety. The Act codifies the Office of Safe Schools within the Department of Education as the central repository for the best practices, training standards, and compliance regarding school safety and security. The Office of Safe Schools' mission is to support the district in providing a safe learning environment for students and educators. Threat assessments take place immediately following the report of a school-based threat and seeks to determine no impending risk exists toward the school, staff, or students. Law enforcement investigates the facts surrounding the reported threat and will determine any further involvement. During the 21-22 school year, the Office of Safe Schools received 195 documented law enforcement threat assessments involving students or a public school. Risk protection orders allow law enforcement to petition a court to temporarily prevent persons from accessing firearms when the person poses significant danger to himself or others. School resource deputies and officers utilize RPOs as an extra layer of protection when someone makes a significant verbal or written threat toward a student, staff, or school population. During the 21-22 school year, law enforcement petitioned and was granted 54 risk protection orders relative to school threats. All of these RPOs were against students. The RPO law also allows law enforcement agencies to petition the court for an extension of an existing RPO that is due to expire. An extended RPO has the same conditions as the original and was valid for up to another 12 months. During the 21-22 school year, we petitioned and were granted extensions on 9 of those risk protection orders. I went really fast because I know it wasn't on the thing, but do you have any questions?
Actually, I did while I wait to see if any other board members indicate that they have questions or comments. Captain Seymour, on page 22, the total number of school districts, or school visits, excuse me, and positive student contacts declined over multiple years. Was that a direct result of COVID, or was that, what would you attribute the decline to?
Are you talking
Less
about
need?
GRIP? Are you talking?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because the responsibilities of GRIP has increased over the years.
Got it.
With RPOs and investigations and RPOs and stuff like that, it takes away from those numbers.
Got it. Are you finding, though, that you're still having success with students, even though there are fewer visits, or would you like to see that increase?
I would love to see that increase.
Okay. Then it's worth a conversation, follow-up for us.
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. I see Ms. Fields, but Ms. Fields, I'm not sure if that was a holdover from previously. Yes, ma'am. Ms. Fields. I'm turning on your mic. You're good.
Thank you. So, Captain Seymour, has there been a decrease in gang association from last year to this year, to your knowledge? And you might not be able to give me an answer today, but we had someone that did a presentation for a group recently from the Lakeland Police Department, and it seems like it is concerning, I guess.
In certain areas of the county, it is concerning and increasing. But overall, I think it's difficult to identify gang affiliation in the schools because juveniles just don't openly admit to being part of it. So it's hard for us to define it, but we are seeing an increase in certain areas of the county.
And then the other question that I had was the same one that Mr. Hyde had. So you answered that.
I would love to have a discussion because their duties and responsibilities has grown since Marjorie Stoneman. And now that school resource officers and deputies cannot leave their schools, I mean, because before a school resource deputy could leave to go do the home check or leave to go transport a student to the hospital or to the juvenile assessment center, they're not allowed to leave anymore. So that leaves GRIP filling in to do a lot of transporting and a lot of the home checks and investigations and school coverage. Yes. So it's difficult because now they're not allowed to leave the schools and they're getting more responsibilities.
I'd like to, I have some options and some ideas that how we might be able to partner a little differently that way.
Okay.
Similar to how we do SROs and guardians, there might be an option for us to explore another avenue to partner with municipalities and the sheriff's office to provide that service. Thank you. I see Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to say, Captain Seymour, you have a yeoman's job. You and your team are amazing. We have a lot of students from a lot of different backgrounds, and we take every child that walks through our doors, with no exception. So we are so grateful to you and your folks. We are so blessed to have you guys in our schools helping us do the job that we're here to do, which is serve our students. And I just want you to know this is amazing. Every year you come and present, and I know it just gets more difficult out there because we all hear the news, read the news, get the updates, and it's continuing to be a challenge. And I just want you to know how much we appreciate you. And we pray for you and your families, and we want you to stay safe with all that you do. Thank you so much for everything. I don't think it can be said enough. If I don't see you beforehand, have a blessed Thanksgiving. Sorry.
Dr.
I
Allen.
know, stop.
How cool is this?
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I know.
Dr. Allen.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'll ditto that as well. Really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
You know, so we do have an agenda item on our meeting tonight, you know, the gaggle. So, you know, we get the text messages and along the way, and I'm sure some of those text messages connect with the data that's being compiled and collected through the gaggle. So we recognize how important that is in regards to school safety and so forth. Any thoughts on that particular software?
Love it.
Okay.
I think it is absolutely necessary. If there was any other out there, I mean, I would love to explore it, but we catch a lot of stuff through Gaggle. So even just one is worth it.
Yep, indeed. Good.
Madam Chair, that truly completes the superintendent's report for this day's work. Sorry. That's not your error, it was our error.
Listen,
Thank
we'll
you, Captain
always, just always allow. Great. I have a couple things before we conclude, and I know we're running short on time. But first will be Superintendent Hyde and I are planning to do a holiday lunch in December before our December board meeting starts. So it'll be 11 a.m. and I believe that meeting is I'm not going to say before I look at the calendar. December 13th? Yes, December 13th. So it would be December 13th at 11 a.m. And that'll be similar to how we've done in the past with cabinet and our staffs, and just a white elephant. And so we'll send out more details, but I want to make sure you can all put it on your calendar for 11 a.m. on December 13th. I have completed all of the meetings on evaluations for our staff members. Wes and Carol's contracts are both up, so we have to notify them by December 15th, 2022 if we are not renewing their contract, which would expire June 30th of next year. So with your permission, my plan was to, between now and the November meeting, meet with each of them to discuss their contracts, see if it's extensions or if there's any direction from the board. I'd love to have that before I meet with them, if anyone has any questions or concerns on that. Seeing none. The same is true for Superintendent Hyde. Superintendent Hyde was very clear in our meeting that he would much prefer a contract extension to a raise. So we are negotiating that. But on behalf of the board, I'll meet with him as well to hash out what that contract would look like and plan to bring that back in November as well. Ms. Cunningham. You can give him the same spiel I did.
Yeah. We've had that conversation, he and I, and not only would I, and maybe this is not the right forum, probably at a board meeting, but I would not only like to look at a contract extension, I would additionally like to discuss some type of compensation through the annuity program for his family, for his family. I don't know, I think of it like that. So anyway, so those are two things that I would like discussed. I'm not sure the timing of it, but I would think after the first of the year would probably be a good time to get through the holidays and maybe get a feel of what, he's willing to accept. But I really feel that we have a rock star amongst us, and he's a hot commodity in the state of Florida, if you don't already know that, and I'm sure you do. And we want to keep Superintendent Hyde. So yes, I'm very much in favor of looking at a contract extension. But I also think in lieu of the raise, perhaps we could do something on the annuity side to be able to compensate him for his incredible time and talent and how far he's moving us in just 1 year forward. And I know we're going to continue to do great things. So I just would like to add that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. And I already have Mr. Bridges looking into some of those alternatives and what tax implications may be involved and things like that. So we are on it.
Awesome.
But I will bring back a proposal to the board, hopefully by our November meeting, but if not, it'll be first of the year. Any other questions or? Yes, Ms. Fields. Oh, sorry.
So when you bring back the recommendations, I would appreciate a copy of the contracts for all three.
Yes, ma'am.
So that we can know exactly what we are comparing the recommendations with, please.
Yes, ma'am. And that'll be on our work session for that week. So I'll make sure all of those attachments are in and that we get them well beforehand.
Thank you.
Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I concur with Ms. Cunningham. I know it's rather short, but if you can get that to the November meeting, I would love to vote on it.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. We will try and get it sooner rather than later. Any other comments or concerns on that?
Madam Chair, if I may just, I
Superintendent Hyde.
feel like I should. So number one, I want to say thank you to the board. I received my evaluation. I'll have follow-up with individual board members. Deeply appreciative for your feedback, your honesty, and for the accountability, quite frankly. But I want to clarify, I am not seeking a pay raise. Knowing that was an interest of the board, as I shared with Chair Wyatt, salary is not what's going to ultimately end my employment with Polk County Public Schools. I'd like to finish out my career here, very satisfied with the work we're doing. However, I'm not interested in a salary enhancement. I did offer to the chair to explore some other options if that was the interest of the board, and one of those being in lieu of a raise, taking whatever amount that would equate to based off the history of the board and how they've done this previously, that I'd rather that be donated to the Polk Education Foundation, and I'd be allowed to issue that in the form of student scholarships annually. So that's really, sincerely, that's my interest, but I know that there's implications, and that's a very complex process, and it has tax implications for the district and for others and myself. But, again, that's the interest I have. I am more interested in a longer-term contract here in Polk County. Again, very happy with the work we're doing. It's challenging work, but we're making great progress together, and I know that it's going to take the commitment on my behalf to stay here to see that work come to fruition. So I'm appreciative of the board again, as I said. So thank you, but I felt the need to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. For the rest of, for all of the evaluations, you'll have an email from me later this afternoon that has a copy of the evaluation. I'm just waiting. My last one was this morning, and I need to scan the signed document into that copy. But you'll have both a link to all of the spreadsheet that's online that's password protected, and then you'll also have a PDF copy. Is there anyone, I know Ms. Fields indicated she'd like hard copies of those. Is there anyone else that would like a hard copy? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, so it'll be in a spreadsheet form, and it'll be both in the individual evaluations as well, so you can see it in both ways. Any questions on evaluations or any of that? Okay. And then the last thing I have is Yvette and I had a conversation last week about adding things to our calendars. And I had requested that she actually send the calendar invite to me for all of these different events, and then I can either accept or decline it. Is there anyone else that would like her to send the calendar invites for all of these events? Or would Ms. Miller has a question?
We talked about actually.
Hold on.
Talked about probably a year ago of some kind of technology that would allow us, because I guess in the past there was actually a written board of things happening where people could sign up to go. But I would love to be able to access, instead of trying to keep up with, I have 2 different chambers, and instead of trying to keep up with all of those in the civic clubs and everything else, if there was a general calendar that can be accessed, that would be very helpful.
Thank you. And I think that's something that we discussed just as we were transitioning in our technology team. So if that's something that maybe we could have Ms. Pasco and her team explore. Oh, you don't have this. Okay. Okay, I may have a solution with something that we use, so we can chat about that. But in the meantime, so if you would like her to send you a calendar invite for events, can I get a show of hands so that she knows who to send them to? Okay. Sorry.
You mean if there are some invites that come from whoever, that it would automatically be sent to all the board members?
Yes, ma'am. So that it pops up on your calendar, then you can accept or decline it from there.
I think for me, and I can only speak for myself, in moderation. But sometimes they come flow like water, and you have so many. So I don't know how that can be monitored, and maybe it can't be. So I guess I'll just hold my answer.
Okay, sounds good. That was my response too, is I feel like sometimes we get 30 emails and if some slip through the cracks and don't end up on my calendar. So that's why we had talked about calendar invites. So if you wouldn't mind, I believe it was the 4 of us. And then we can check with the new board members as they come on if they'd like those as well. Thank you. Dr. Allen.
Awesome. So as a point of discussion on this, there's a couple calendars that the district pushes out, and we can subscribe to that calendar, and that feeds right into my master calendar. And it's not necessarily something that I have to accept, but I can actually have a glimpse of what's happening. Obviously, we're all managing multiple calendars and so forth. So if it's something like that, that's great. But I mean, I love the idea of getting the invite, and I can then manage it from that standpoint as well. But it's something like that we can subscribe to that would have a big picture of school board related events would be great.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. It's exciting. Post-COVID, everything's coming back, and it seems like our calendars are getting full very, very quickly, which is not a bad thing, but we want to make sure that we can attend as many events as possible. So thank you for helping coordinate. I can't imagine, my own calendar is chaos. I can't imagine managing 7 different people's calendars. So thank you, Yvette, for your assistance. And I believe that is all that I have. Does any other board members have either any updates from your liaison positions or anything for the good of the order? Okay, with that, we are going to adjourn this work session. And if we could get the room cleared, we have, I believe, some discipline cases. And I would ask that the board, if we can just stay and go straight into discipline, and that way we can take a break between discipline and the regular meeting. In public relations, if you can tell us when we're all clear on recording devices, please. Okay. Right here. Oh, sorry. It's.
Go under 2022.